Amber Guyger was convicted of murder and sentenced to 10 years. This all happened in Texas, and it was for basically shooting a man who was sitting on the couch eating ice cream in his own house because she mistakenly thought it was her house. Now, you can get my opinion on a lot of things, but I'm not a legal mind. I'm not a legal expert. But I do have a friend who is a legal mind and a legal expert, and one of the few people left that is willing to tell you how it is. So I want to get his thoughts on the case, and maybe he can educate a lot of us, because we know that the mass media will not give us what Judge Joe Brown will give us. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Judge Joe Brown. Judge Joe Brown, how's it going, bro?
All right, brother. Glad to be here. By the way, comment the problem we would have hooking up. I was talking to you. It was getting deep. All of a sudden, my phone went dead. Yours, I don't know what happened. We've been trying to call each other for 10 minutes. Every time you get me, I pick up and call goes dead and vice versa.
Yep.
Real, you think Big Brother Sweet Meat is at it?
The booty bandits are in effect. Like, literally, guys, what y'all don't understand is we were talking and he was getting real deep explaining to me, and I want him to explain to you guys what he was explaining to me, and the phone died. So we were texting each other and trying to call each other back, and neither could get the other one. And then he said his phone just all of a sudden reset.
Yeah. Here's what we were talking about. That thing down in Texas. First off, the media is playing tricks with people, and it has not met its obligations to be informative to the public.
Talk about it.
There are a lot of things wrong with it. Last year, when it first came up, I told people, I said, you know what, in most states, assuming everything that woman says is true, she would probably get found guilty of the state's statutes on either voluntary, involuntary manslaughter or criminally negligent homicide, because she didn't look and identify the target before she shot. However, the news media has been putting out a lot of garbage on this case. One of the things that ought to be known to the public is that in Texas, they don't have it broken down: first-degree murder, second-degree, voluntary manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, criminally negligent homicide, or reckless homicide, things like that. They just have murder, and the jury does the sentencing, not the judge. So when the jury came back with 10 years, I was saying, okay, they did not buy her story, and they said there's no excuse for not identifying the target before you shot. In most states, that offense would carry somewhere between 2 and 8 years for a first offender. In Tennessee, it would be 3, mandatory 3, unless there was a deviation from the rather long and intricate sentencing guidelines. Mm-hmm. It would even, in some, be subject to probation. So actually, what degree of murder she got found guilty of, that's kind of a harsh sentence. So what I got disturbed about was the black bailiff going over and fiddling with the defendant's hair as the verdict read. Mm-hmm. And then the judge came down with a pair of shorts on and some flip-flops, which was a disgrace, and embracing the woman and handing her a Bible. Like, fool, don't you get it? Separation of church and state, and you hand her a Bible and you embrace her. That's something that should result in some, at least a private admonition.
That's what I was about to ask. Is there any grounds for a mistrial with things like this happening? Would this be a ground for a mistrial?
No, but see, they can't, because they've already found the woman guilty and not guilty of lesser and included degrees of murder. So you can't go back.
Okay.
And do anything to her. The state can appeal the sentence, but the bottom line is the sentence determines what she was found guilty of or is reflected.
Got it.
So there's nothing that can be done. The defendant can appeal, and then he gets to something else. People were all bent out of shape about why did she charge Castle Doctor. Well, on that, I'd have to commend the judge, because if she had not charged that as part of the charge set, there's a set of charges that a defendant is entitled to, then that would have given the defense some pretty good grounds for divorce. You see, what happens is on this criminally negligent homicide, you have a requirement to, well, that's not what they call it in Texas, but it's good for explanative purposes. You have an obligation to identify your target before you shoot. Why? It might be your son or daughter coming home from college to surprise mom and dad getting shot, or your husband getting up to go out, take a smoke or something and coming back and you shooting him, or your wife, or your drunk next door neighbor, or your neighbor taking Ambien and sleepwalking, or one of your high school kids' friends coming by to knock on the door, and you know, tragic error, so ID. But you see, when you have castle doctrine, which is it's your home, that identification thing is relaxed. See, they have always had in the law, common law, statutory law, something known as tumultuous entry. In other words, if you're sitting in your home and somebody kicks in the door, crashes through a window, you don't have to ID, you can shoot right away. When you get castle doctrine, you put that in there. So if she thought it was her house, what that would say is she wasn't negligent. She thought she was entitled to follow that law, which says the identification requirement was relaxed. That the jury did not buy. But if the judge hadn't put that in there, then that might have been good grounds for the defense to have gotten a reversal or some other success on appeal, because you see, there's always a thing in the law called criminal intent. What did the defendant intend to be the consequences of his actions? Or in some cases, did the defendant specifically intend to take the action that he or she did? Or lesser, did she intend to take the action without the specific contemplation of the result that followed? Okay, so those things go into intent. The law is not explained. Now, why do we have castle doctrine? Well, the castle doctrine has been, by common law and unofficially, the doctrine for a couple of hundred years in damn near every state in the Union. The reason it is codified as castle doctrine is, and this is a real situation, an armed burglar broke into somebody's home. He's climbing up the staircase. The armed homeowner is at the top of the staircase. They exchange shots. Burglar is not hit, but he stumbles and falls and breaks his leg and sues the homeowner, whose home he brought into and got into a gun battle. See,
did he win?
That kind of, what's that?
Did he win?
Well, yeah, he did. Not the burglar, but, you know, it got to the point where the man got through hundreds of thousands of dollars in attorney fees and all kinds of hassle on a civil matter. So to make sure that didn't happen, a lot of states started saying, look, we got a castle doctrine. You inside your house, this stuff ain't going to wash. You broke in, you tried to burglarize the man, you brought the shit out on yourself, you know. So that's the castle doctrine. It also embraces this thing of tumultuous entry, where if you're in your home and somebody busts in, you don't have to go through all these changes of IDing who it is before you shoot. But as a matter of due prudence, you don't want to kill somebody that you love who just may be drunk, sleepwalking, or coming home for an early visit.
Very true. Okay, so can I ask you this question then before we move on?
The reason you got this nonsense was because of Anderson Cooper on CNN with that charlatan stuff he does and CNN does. See, for example, this didn't come out. Trayvon Martin's grandfather was a lieutenant detective on the Miami Police Department. His father was a sergeant. They were visiting a lady who was a cop. But CNN wanted it to be kept hood rat, question mark, Jew, question mark, shoot somebody that looks like a thug. When what it is Zimmerman is Cubano, and that's name, that last Jewish name, is because probably his grandfather came around because his great-grandmama or grandmama got screwed by some visiting Jewish guy from New York going down to Atlanta. And they adopted the name for the child. But I was in a bar when the verdict was announced. And this guy said, Jesus Christ, where is Zimmerman? I said, that's him. But that's some kind of Hispanic. That's Zimmerman. But what he got a Jewish name for? That's Zimmerman. Jesus Christ, all this time I was thinking he was Jewish when he's just a Cubano, Hispanic gangbanger. Yeah, that's it. Jesus Christ, man. See, that was to boost ratings. And that's what they do. So when you had the castle doctrine that Anderson Cooper kept talking about, it didn't apply because it was not inside a house. And when you're talking about the right of no retreat they kept talking about, every American state but 8 has the right to stand your ground. Because 8 states came up with a rule saying you had to retreat. New England states, maybe it's only 6. And what that was is before you could defend yourself, you had to try and make some effort to get on up and run. But then what happens if the guy's out for a walk with his wife and mother-in-law and somebody tries to attack them? Is he supposed to turn and run and leave them and the devil take the hindmost? Well, states started including in their charges to the jury stuff that they didn't publish widely, but it would read like, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you are instructed to find that if the defendant took any move as though to retreat, such as raising a heel as though to step back or inclining his body slightly as though to withdraw, that is sufficient. You didn't want this stupid requirement of him supposed to leave his women and children and run away as fast as he could and leave them there with the bad guy so they could get jacked. See, so it's just ridiculous. Every state except those 8 had a no retreat doctrine. You can stand your ground. And when I would charge juries on the bench for the 2 terms I got elected, it would be, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the defendant has raised the defense of self-defense. First of all, you are instructed that the defendant has no duty to retreat. He may stand his ground, etc., etc. I've been doing that for 5 decades here in Tennessee, and that's been the law ever since I started. But you see, Trayvon Martin is the one with the right of no retreat, not Zimmerman, but Anderson Cooper doing that shyster thing that they do with CNN, trying to get everybody riled up and keeping you in the mind of stay tuned so you can boost the ratings. They ran that shit on everybody.
Well, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you something then. The trial, the case, and ladies and gentlemen, we are live with Judge Joe Brown. Make sure you guys check him out on Twitter, and he's an upcoming show, and I want him to talk about that before we leave. But the case in Oklahoma, where the woman shot the man in the back as he was walking away, she was found not guilty of doing anything. How is it that how did that happen with her? Maybe you can explain that legally, how that was okay.
See, one of the problems with justice being just us is because so many of us want to get off of jury service. Even the judge said she was shocked. The lawyers, I talked, yesterday I interviewed some of the lawyers for the deceased family, and they said they were shocked when nobody held their hands up because it's been their experience that does anyone have any reason why they should not serve on this jury? All the black hands go up. You get all these trifling excuses. They just don't want to be bothered. Then they bitch about justice is just stuff. Yeah, because you excuse your ass from the jury. Yep. Or you got a criminal conviction, so you can't find jurors because they're excluded if they got a felony conviction. So it's things we do. Oh, we don't pay attention to who's running for judge. We might pay attention to the congressman or the mayor or something, but the mayor can't lock your ass up. The congressman certainly can't. Your assemblyman or your city councilman can't. He can't grant a divorce. He can't set child support,
Amen.
custody, set bond, lock your ass up, let you out of jail on probation, confine you and deny your petition, let this evidence in, exclude this evidence. But we don't pay any damn attention. We wait until we show up at the poll and some shyster who's getting paid for it hands us a sample ballot without a picture for the white boy that's running for the judgeship. So we vote for him instead of somebody black. Or we don't have good black candidates because we got too many house Negroes. You know, one time in Memphis, which is the largest predominantly black city in America, it's sometimes an embarrassment now. We have a situation where for years, this now deceased criminal court judge that I cussed out in a few judicial meetings, who was a sick puppy, he had formerly been Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan and chairman of the White Citizens Council, but the blacks kept giving him the black bloc vote. Because these characters that sold us out masquerading as leaders would get a lot of money from him and put him on the ballots that they passed out. And we paid no attention. We paid no attention to the DA's office, the sheriff's office, or to the judges for the most part. So we get what we put out on the plate. Now in Oklahoma, the jury was not like it was in Texas, which is like kind of a reversal, but it is what it is. I'd say this, even Trump called her out. He said, you know, she was in over her head, meaning she was a coward. See, one of the problems you have with the cops is racism, of course, but it becomes a crutch for a lot of cops who are cowards. They know they're cowards, but they want to assume the status of being brave men and women, so they become cops. And as soon as the stuff hits the fan, that punk comes out. And the punk is shown by them blathering on about, you know, white supremacy nonsense, but to a great extent, that's not even a really control factor. They're just punks. They have no reason to ever wear a badge because they're cowards. And they're piss on themselves. They're so damn scared. I've seen brave cops been on the force, retired after 30 years, never pulled a gun on anybody. And then you got some punk ass who, if you challenge, you know, where he can't go at you like he's a cop because, you know, you're the judge or you're the prosecutor or you're the not a public defender for the city, you know, or you're a reserve deputy or something, and you see them and they can't go at you like that, they're cowards.
You know what's funny, Judge? Some cops got in trouble. I don't know if you remember when the 5 Dallas cops were shot in Dallas.
Yeah, on that little gathering, the protest.
Yes. Well, some of the cops
they were talking about multiple snipers, and it turned out to be one man they blew up with a robot.
Right. All of that seemed kind of just weird, wrong, and just suspect. But during that night, I was live on my show. Some of the Dallas cops, the black ones, called into my show from their patrol car as it was going on. And they spoke about, they said, look, a lot of these cops, he said, especially these white boys they have on the force, he said they come from backgrounds where he said either they come out of some little racist organization. He said, but a lot of them are punks. He said they pull their weapons. He said when you try to tell on them, you get fired. He was just going off while this was happening. Now, because that happened, they tried to get them fired and everything. It was all on it was on CNN. It was on the Huffington Post because they were like racist radio show hosts. That's what they called me. And I was like, wait a minute, what? And but these guys were saying exactly what you just said. Why is it that not enough cops can come out and speak on the punks who are on the force like you did and how these guys did?
Well, there's a brother you need to hook up with. He runs behind the blue curtain. They tried to wipe him out. He's a Texas cop, and he retired after 25 years. Nice guy. I'll give you the details, but he's got a show that comes on Saturday mornings called Behind the Blue Curtain. He pulls the covers off of them, and they've been trying to kill him for days. But you see, you have these people who have no personal, charisma, no, presence, and it's judges and prosecutors particularly, and cops, and they get jobs in positions where they cloak their lack of personal authority with the authority of the office. And they try to use it. I hate to use the term bully, because in my, era, bullying was something that you busted the dude in the mouth and taught him why he shouldn't be one. But nowadays, these boys have got to be protected from the bullies by mama and the police and the faculty and everybody else in hell, and they never learn to deal with bullies, and they grow up to be big punks who have no masculinity in them, and they shoot up hallways and they shoot up the hoods. See, one secret people don't want to deal with, we're trying to get Black Pride back again, but one of the problems with all of these hood rats is they're bitches. They are raised like girls, they like pussy, but they don't have man in them. They're just like lesbians in boys' bodies. A lesbian is raised as a girl, she likes girl pussy, but she's got a pussy herself. If the fairy godbag came in and waved a magic wand over her overnight and she woke up with a dick, she'd be like your typical gangbanger, a bitch in a boy's body. And I'm not talking about, I'm saying bitch in a derogatory sense, because the ones that are putting it in there, they don't act like good women. And part of the whole thing about what goes on in the hood with all of these kids outside of the family, no dad around, is it's just like what happened on the plantation. Massa come in and he rewards them women that be dropping new livestock for Massa.
Yes, sir.
Get special privilege. And see, the Johnson administration had no idea, I'm sure, that it would get where it's gotten. But it created an environment for which people started breeding. In other words, most people throughout history had kids based on the degree to which they could support kids. But you got something new in the late 60s where you started having kids to support yourself. And you left the kids to Medea or Big Mama to take care of, while you went out and used what came in. And then Medea or Big Mama or Medea, she started saying, okay, all my daughters, you bring your babies over here and I get the check. I give you a little bit of it so you can give it to your boyfriend. You can go on and sell some pussy or steal shoplift and boost and sell drugs and play bitch. But I keep all the kids and I get the money and I get myself a new car. And I got a nice young man, he's 26 years old, and he got a big snake to be putting anaconda up in the tongue. See, and that's the way they roll. And we've got a screwed up neighborhood. We don't have, our neighborhoods are screwed up because there are no men. I grew up in L.A., and I remember Tom Bradley, who became the second black mayor of L.A., the first black mayor was literally the first mayor of Los Angeles when it was still a Mexican territory and possession. He used to talk to the grown men, and we boys would go along with him, and what he would talk to them about is there's a problem over there. Now, if you guys want to go deal with it, my partner and I will say you were talking to us when it went down, when it goes down, So the men in the neighborhood took care of the problems in the neighborhood. And we had one or two, what the wives used to call, and mothers used to call women of ill repute, that had all these babies, 14, 15 babies by 10 or 11 different men. And all of the babies, the males, wind up becoming gangbangers. In L.A., it was the Slausons, Vikings, Dale Vikings, businessmen, Bobtown, De La Soul, etc. That went out when they had that uprising in 1965 where they ran LAPD up out of the hood, and they had to bring in the army. So for 18 months, there were only 2 black-on-black homicides, and it was a domestic thing where one woman shot her husband for messing around on her, and another one shot her boyfriend for messing around on it. There were no rapes, no robberies, no burglaries, and no assaults. It was peaceful. And LAPD rode 4 deep and looked straight ahead, didn't look at anybody instead of trying to taunt them.
Well,
then they started coming back from being bad, and then they got the Panther Party to go deal with all of that, and other folk too.
Well, Judge, I got to say one thing to you before I ask you a question, which is really a question that a lot of people want to. And if y'all have never seen the movie Hateful Eight, I'm dedicating this right here to Judge Joe Brown right now.
Talk that sass, nigga. Talk that sass.
I gotta talk that sass. Talk that sass. But listen, I gotta ask you a real question because people want to know this right here. Would you have allowed the victim's brother to go hug the defendant during the victim's impact statement?
Excuse me, sir. Mr. Williams, that was one of my bailiffs. Would you ask that gentleman if he has taken leave of his senses? Well, if he has not, then he's got 2 choices: to sit himself down and behave with appropriate decorum, or you can see if your key works in lockup.
So what was that all about in
and
your
are you
opinion?
trying to slip a weapon to the defendant?
Thank you.
On trial for murder, been convicted of murder? What is wrong with you? Sit down. That is unheard of. I've been doing this for 5 decades, and I have never seen a judge get up and go hug somebody. That was just totally non-judicial. There ought to be a reprimand in place for that. And I hope a lot of people are complaining to Texas' edition or version of the Court of the Judiciary about that.
I said
that
the same.
was just inappropriate judicial conduct in shorts and flip-flops, and you step down from your bench and do that.
I said that last night. I said everything about that was inappropriate. I said, number one, knowing that that was the brother of the victim, him just saying, can I go hug this woman? He could have easily punched that woman, beat that woman down, and the whole court, the judge and everybody would have been held liable to her actions as if she knows.
They wouldn't have been held liable, but it would have been a scandal.
Well, it's like as if she knows what's in his head. How would she know that he's really going to hug the person? Why would you take that risk?
Because, again, we have to keep control of who you have as a judge. See, you don't play damn mama going up, I'm going to hug the defendant. She needs some love and understanding. And here, honey, Jesus will be your strength. Oh, hell no. And by the way, I posted an article from BBC that talked about this very case and that so-called forgiveness and the judge and that bailiff and that brother. And you know what their conclusion was? It's a carryover from slavery when slaves would talk to forgive their white masters for what anybody, quote, anybody else in the world would have held to be an unforgivable act.
Exactly. I said that. I said we forgive white people who do some of the most heinous stuff before we'll forgive a black person for not paying us back $20.
That white boy that killed 9 folk in a church a few years ago, and he got a $1 million bond, $100,000 bond or something like that. And somebody black got accused of something, and they got a $10 million bond, but the church forgave him for killing all those people.
We act like we're going to get
Negroes always got to get his ass up and forgive somebody. See, what would have happened in history if Emmett Till's mother had got up, I forgive them for lynching my son? See, how would history have changed? That nothing would have been made of it. And I can tell you, because I was alive and breathing air then. I was in elementary school when that happened with, I was in junior high school when that happened with Emmett Till. it made a big thing when she had the courage to say, no, I'm not forgiving these people. They did evil. And to show people what kind of evil it is, we're going to have an open casket proceeding. It lasted 3 days so everybody can see what they did to my boy.
Mm-hmm.
And people got angry, and it motivated people and galvanized the movement. Well, part of the movement. But anyway, see, something needs to be done about these things. We're always turning the other damn cheek.
I said
That
this.
whole thing was just to pacify the colored.
Oh, I said it last night.
I studied slave pamphlets back with a think tank in 1972 in D.C., and I read pamphlet after pamphlet they had on microfilm in the Library of Congress, and they talked about Christianize the slaves, teach them forgiveness at all costs, pay particular attention to the clauses about turn the other cheek, so they will be peaceful and passive, good slaves to endure their trial and travail so they can get to the pearly gates and get pie in the sky after they die.
I talked about that last night. I said,
damn fools always going around praying and forgiving somebody and the power of prayer when you ought to be getting angry. See, that's what the black church has done to us. Every time black folk get motivated to do something because they get pissed off, the church pacifies them so they can take one more week. And then they get all of that damn money so they don't have anything to buy guns and ammunition with or to organize with or to put on some kind of movement.
well, here's the thing.
See, it's crazy.
What about the story of Nat Turner? Remember, that's what his job was, to go around and give the slaves Christianity.
He's a preacher, but he's supposed to be starting a movement, and all the colored folk turned him in.
Right, but remember, when he started, they gave him all kinds of freedoms because he was subjugating his people with Christianity. He didn't realize, wait a minute, I'm subjugating my people with this.
Excuse me. That's the movie, Birth of a Nation, the redo. That's not the reality.
Okay, tell me something.
Reality is somewhat different. Have you ever seen the original Birth of a Nation?
No, sir. So tell me something. Educate me.
The real Birth of the Nation was the first feature-length movie. It was a silent movie.
Oh, the white. I seen it. Yes, the one where the propagandist movie.
At the time, Democrat Woodrow Wilson, who signed an executive order officially segregating the Navy, officially segregating D.C., and all staff and all government buildings in D.C. He said the Birth of the Nation is the greatest cultural event that had occurred in the country up to that point. He was from Virginia. He was a Democrat. And the Birth of the Nation took place not before the Civil War with Nat Turner. It didn't have anything to do with it. The Birth of the Nation had to do with the Ku Klux Klan being glorified, and it took place during Reconstruction. They had all these white folk dressed up in blackface like they were black soldiers, terrorizing and raping white women and intimidating white men, and the Klan rose to put them in their place. So there was a resurgence of the Klan thanks to that movie.
Yes.
And then in 1919, you had that really bad race riot in D.C. that lasted most of a week. Black folk got armed. They were going up to Baltimore and buying guns and coming back and on the rooftops shooting it out with the white folk.
So what was the true story of Nat Turner, though? What did he not do?
Nat Turner, also Denmark Vesey, just got tired of what was going on, got pissed off, and went around in the back ways and organized these black men and a few black women to rise up. What happened is they started an uprising. It was a successful uprising for a few weeks until some colored folk infiltrated it and ratted him out, or both of them out, Denmark Vesey and Nat Turner.
Okay.
See, you had Andrew Jackson, who put all those Native Americans on the Trail of Tears where so many died, was notorious when he was a general down in what is now called the Seminole Indian Wars. At the time, the War Department recorded it as the Colored Wars because so many escaped slaves had gone down into the Everglades where they could survive and gotten together with the Seminole Indians. So like Osceola, Arkansas, named after Chief Osceola. Osceola's father was an escaped slave and his mother was a Native American, a Seminole. So what his solution was is to capture the Seminole women and children, a lot of them half black, put them in wooden stockades and burn the stockade down and burn them alive, 100, 120 at a time. So that's the tradition. Hell, he was a Democrat, by the way. That was the tradition that we had in terms of how you properly treat black folks. And the whole thing came up where some blacks were intimidated, but instead of running off to the Everglades where the white folk couldn't catch them, they just sat up there and turned in their people. But what Denmark Vesey and Nat Turner did is they utilized some of those blacks that had run off into the forest and swamps. You know, this was the South. And it was basically impenetrable if you didn't know your way around. In fact, one of the reasons that General Sherman is accounted such a great general is he figured out a way to have his troops build roads at 5 miles a day through these swamps that they said he couldn't get through. But see, those black folk that Nat Turner and Denmark Vesey recruited came out of those swamps, and they were killing a lot of white folk. But they got infiltrated by colored folk who turned them in and squealed on them and told the white folk what their plans were, so they got set up and trapped.
Man, listen.
See, that movie, Birth of a Nation, they had to make him a good goddamn Christian. Excuse me. You know, I don't want to blaspheme, but yeah. In other words, subvert all of their spirit and wait for some pie in the sky, and you got to get permission from Jesus before you act.
Well, here's the thing, though. So we look at this case, in the Amber Guyger case. Put that in the freezer. We look at this case, the Amber Guyger case. Something about this case does not sit well with me, and let me explain it to you.
Of course it doesn't.
Like you said at the beginning that she actually got the stiffer part of the sentence, but I just felt like shouldn't she be expected to have a better grasp of her surroundings and shoot first, ask questions later, situations simply because she's a cop?
On herself is what happened. She either had a booty call set up or she pissed her panties. Now, let me tell you what I did think was really horrendous about this case. She's got a cell phone. No telling what's in that cell phone. And by law, here's what happens when you have text. If you erase the text within 48 hours, the only person that has a copy is the recipient. The phone company can't keep a copy.
Really?
They have to let it go within 48 hours. If you don't, then they have to keep a permanent record for 60 days. So if the subscriber or the police requested it, they have to give a verbatim recitation of all of your text for 60 days. What you texted to everybody you sent a text to. If you erase it within 48 hours, it's gone, except for the copy somebody, the recipient had. So they let her have her phone nominally to talk to her attorney, which was ridiculous because they let her erase any text exchange she had with the dead man in case it was a booty call. They did have something in there about her sending the text to her former partner, a guy, talking about how horny she was. You know, like you're really asleep and you're horny, half asleep. Yeah, bull. The other thing is that they let her erase the calls or the text or the recipient's name. You know, you just delete it. And they let her have her phone for about 10 minutes, supposedly talking to her attorney while she had free opportunity to delete anything incriminating. They coached her, they did everything else, and they didn't want to charge her. That is the police being the they. They were protecting her. They closed ranks. And yeah, he shot, it seems, how? There's no blood splatter on the couch, so that kind of wrecks the theory of he got up off my couch and I shot him, and then he's halfway between the couch and the front door. How did she get in? But then again, that might be good for the family. There was testimony that they had problems with the locks in those condominiums. So if they couldn't secure the door, then that makes the housing complex liable potentially to the family. So it could work either way. The story was that the doors didn't lock.
No, they actually said the door was cracked, which makes no sense to me. But how is it that...
No, it doesn't.
No, like everything they're saying makes no sense.
Here's the problem.
If she deleted text messages, didn't she tamper with evidence?
Yeah, but see, here's the problem with the homicide case. It's not like you see on CSI or these 48 hours. The truth of the matter is 85% of the homicide cases are solved by a confession.
That I didn't know.
More than that, an admission. 97.4% of the people in jail for murder pled guilty, and more than 85% confessed.
Damn.
Homicide is one of the hardest cases to prove if somebody keeps his mouth shut. She kept her mouth shut in part, except for certain calculated statements they coached her to make about what went down. And see, if she doesn't confess, the only witness they have is dead. So you're stuck with her story, and she has no prior record, so she's presumed to be a credible witness. Yeah, they brought in that stuff about her racist tweets, but that's because she tried to portray herself as a good character. When somebody puts character in issue, you can rebut it by reputation or he said, she said. It's a dangerous thing to do. It just shows the pitfalls inherent in an American system. Now, why is it like that? Sometimes it works out for good because you don't want a Gestapo where they can come in, strap you in a chair, and torture you for 5 hours until you admit what they want you to admit. See, American law and English law embraces the concept of the perfect crime because the only way you can prove it is for the state to violate the rules that restrain the state's power. And you don't want the state to have this power because they can use it for political purposes in addition to prosecuting for criminal law. And why didn't the brother have a gun? Well, he got shot. Well, you know, I've had many a case in my court, murder case, where the victim got his heart destroyed, but he was able to get up and move around for 10 seconds before he lost his eyesight and faint after 15, never to revive again. 10 seconds is a long time.
Yeah.
Usain Bolt can run more than 100 meters.
Well, let me ask this then. We knew she destroyed evidence, which shouldn't have been allowed. She also lied.
They gave her the opportunity.
But she also lied and said she was performing CPR on him. That was proven not true. So even if it was an accident, do they not take into account during trials what the person did subsequent the so-called accident? Like if they tried to cover it up, doesn't that show something or no?
It's like this, okay? If you're driving your car down the street and you just overlook somebody on your immediate right or left and you pull over and it's a fender bender, that's negligence, okay? If you're driving down the street 25, 30 miles an hour over the speed limit, you're trying to smoke a joint or you're trying to eat some Baskin-Robbins ice cream and on the cell phone, then that becomes reckless, all right? If you were doing something sufficiently negligent or sufficiently reckless, then it becomes, if you kill somebody in the accident, it becomes criminally negligent homicide, all right? So what the jury apparently bought was she came in there, she panicked, and she shot the man when she should have taken the time to identify him. And for that, that was negligence that rose to the level of culpability. It just wasn't an accident. It was real life stupid.
So again, why aren't these things put out there as mitigating circumstances to where she would get the top end of whatever it is?
Well, see, the top end would have to go, okay, let's take what is classically perceived as a murder. Under the common law, all murders were second-degree murder unless they were calculated, planned, plotted out, there was an ambush, or there was poisoning, or somebody got paid, hired to do the professional hit.
Which, as you said, is very hard.
Getaway.
Which, as you said, is very hard to prove, right?
First degree. That is used to be wanton and premeditated murder with malice aforethought. Now they usually put it out as intentional and deliberate murder. In other words, somebody intended to do it and they deliberated over it. They took some time to plan it and plot it. It doesn't have to be long, but they did. Okay, second degree murder is defined as a killing done in the heat of passion, where the passion was sufficient to cause the defendant to act in an irrational manner. Manslaughter is defined as the killing that occurs in the heat of passion, where the provocation is sufficient to cause an ordinary and reasonable person to act in an irrational manner. Now, that was the classical murder. So, in other words, somebody was just incensed, in a rage, and killed somebody in a hot anger, but intended to kill them. If it was something that was not just particular to the defendant, but to anybody is likely to have been outraged, and it's manslaughter. If it's something where somebody was doing something wrong, it was involuntary manslaughter if the wrong resulted in the killing. If the wrong that resulted in the killing was a felony like robbery, rape, burglary, arson, or something like that, then what happened is it becomes a murder in the perpetration of a felony, and that is treated as a first-degree murder. See, there are degrees of homicide. Reckless homicide, you're just acting a damn fool, driving your car too fast, and you kill somebody. That may be a special category of reckless homicide, generally denoted as vehicular homicide. You come in and you hear a light go on, you know, or a glass fall off, and you just rush in and shoot through the door. That's criminally negligent homicide, you see. So they probably bought into her. They said she was probably just scared as hell. She didn't look. She panicked. All that training just went out the window, and she punked out. That's negligence. Therefore, criminally negligent homicide. And they gave her for that kind of thing, they gave her a sentence at the stiff end. In other words, she pissed on herself.
Right. But we aren't, so we don't have to hold her to a higher standard based upon the position and training that she has. Because last night, somebody talked to me on the show, and he said he's a truck driver, over-the-road truck driver. He said he is held to a higher standard when he gets into any kind of wreck than a regular citizen who drives.
It depends on the state he's in, but to an extent, yeah. They look at the person and said, okay, he's supposed to be able to be better. So if it is an excusable accident, if it was just an accident, see, there are accidents where there's no negligence involved. Negligence is your omission to do something you're required to do, or you're doing something you should have refrained from doing that causes the accident. True. A reasonably prudent person would not have done this under these circumstances, or a reasonably prudent person would have done this under the circumstances. In other words, a person would have kept a good lookout. or failure to maintain safe, controlled, and/or lookout caused the accident. So if you didn't control your car, you failed to keep a proper lookout, then that's negligence. You got what I'm saying?
Yes,
Law
sir.
students have to really sweat this out to get it right. But it's the law. And it deals with the fact that there are nuances that go along with human nature. But I'm more peeved by what the judge, the bailiff, and that witness did
Yep.
almost than I am by the verdict, because knowing the law like I have for 5 decades, I predicted it was going to be something like this, and they actually gave her something at the stiff end.
Okay, so you're okay with the sentence. You think that it's fair. It's the other stuff.
Well, I don't say it's fair, because look what happened to this guy in Pennsylvania. He got 45
That's what I'm saying.
Still in the police car. But you
Yes.
see, where that came in is we didn't participate in the political process. And the Tea Party brought in stuff out of this Alex manual that's put out by the Tea Party in California. And at the time they put that into legislative form in that state, there was this big uproar over people killing police dogs. So they went all over the end, the deep end, about protecting police dogs, and there were too many people in the state legislature that did not know the law. There are a lot of ignorant people that are elected to state legislatures now. It used to be 60, 65 years ago, the majority of the state legislative bodies in the U.S. House of Representatives and U.S. Senate
Were lawyers.
who
Yep.
knew the law.
I knew that.
People have no background in law, and they don't know. So they just go off of what they are heard. And a lot of these things that are passed by the feds and locally and on the state level, they just make no damn sense. It's just people going off of, I believe, rather than my opinion based on the following knowledge base or experience base. They don't have that anymore.
So,
And you hear the rhetoric. He believes. No, I don't want any fool believing. You can believe the damn earth is flat. I want somebody who's got an opinion based on data, evidence, analysis, an application of rationality, logic, reason, and practicality. But it's always believed. We have a different dialogue going on in politics now. In my lifetime, for the first half of it, it was essentially based on a person's performance, his demonstrated ability to handle the office he's seeking, or those things that would indicate that he could. Now they have stuff that they put out as first and foremost, stuff that's dealing with things that used to be on the front page of the National Enquirer, Globe, Star, or whatever the tabloid was. We have tabloid journalistic precepts now that determine our assessment of political aspirants or political officials. Who cares who he's screwing? What kind of job is he doing so that you get your job kept, that you make money reasonably commensurate for what you do for this particular firm you work for? You know, how safe is it for you to walk down your streets? What is going on in terms of the ability for you to secure a proper education for your kids?
mm-hmm.
You know, these kind of things are the province of government. But interestingly enough, as we start holding our officials to account for what used to be salacious stuff on the last page, last column of the newspaper in the gossip column, we're turning around and we're legitimizing that kind of nonsense that was on the last show. That tranny thing. You know, and speaking of which, my opinion on that is see, they are blowing smoke in the people's face by talking about gender. And he wants to be a girl in his heart. Well, no, let's talk about sex. As in, what sex organs do you have? There are two categories. You got a dick or you got a pussy. You know, let's talk about animals. Humans are mammals. If you've got a male mammal and you want to make sure he can't reproduce, you neuter him. If it's a female, you spay her. and then it becomes, I guess, an it, but they usually by convention reserve the sex notation. It's a stallion or it's a gelding, but it's a he, or they don't spay horses, so it still remains a she. It's a mare, but they do cats or dogs, so the dog's spayed, but it's still a bitch, or it's been neutered, it's still a guy or a boy, you know. So you get these people who voluntarily want to spay themselves. Well, that doesn't make them the opposite sex because they want to go neuter themselves. You know, and this whole thing about trannies competing against girls, that's not safe. One of them is going to get killed before people get the idea. And
right.
Women have worked too hard to get some kind of gender equality in sports to allow some failed boy athlete to declare he wants to be a sissy, so he wants to compete with the girls. We ought to have two leagues. Some people say, well, we need to have the guys and the girls and then something for the trans. We don't need something for the trans. It's just like, what do you get for people who don't have the eyesight to fly a plane? They aren't pilots. What do you have for all of the tens of thousands of people sitting up in the stands looking at a football game that can't cut it on, make the team on a football game? They sit in the goddamn stands. They don't need to have a special little thing for failed folk that can't make the football team, you know? So they ought to have two leagues, the dick league and the pussy league. If you got a dick, you play in the dick league. If you got a pussy, you play in the pussy league. If you can't cut it in the dick league, then you sit your ass in the stands.
Well, I think here's my thing though. If a woman's good enough to play in the men's league, they will let her play in it. So I think the men need to get to play in the WNBA.
But you see, what if, like that thing was, what if LeBron wanted to declare himself to be a woman and play in the WNBA?
Right.
That's ridiculous. Brother wouldn't do it, but I mean, hypothetically.
It needs to be a brother do it, though. Just to, Judge.
Let's get Formula One racing. Formula One racing is the Nate Plus Ultra racing cars. Right now, Mercedes is leading the Constructor Championship for the 5th year in a row. Their car costs $28 million a copy. The only black man that has ever raced in Grand Prix racing, Lewis Hamilton, who's a good young brother, 32, is on the way to be the 6-time world champion. He's got more pole positions than any other driver in the 80-year history of the sport. He's got 3 more races to win, and he will have and he'll have more races won than any other driver in the 80-year history of the sport. He's had more fastest laps than any driver in the 80-year history of the sport. And interestingly enough, one of the winningest teams used to be Williams. Well, old man Williams died, and his daughter took it over. So for the time that she's been in charge of the team, it has finished dead last in every single race for 5 years. Sometimes their cars are so slow they can't even get on the grid because they are hazard. Well, the woman says they need to change these 230-mile-an-hour race cars. They can pull 4 Gs around a turn. They ought to tame them so women can drive them. Well, then, hell, women just don't need to drive. They had one woman who was trying to drive about 5 years ago. She couldn't cut it, so she went down to a lesser race category, and she had a wreck and lost both of her legs. She shouldn't have ruined herself as an attractive woman, which she was, by trying to do that. That's stupid. You put men in that position where they can lose legs and arms and pieces of faces. You don't put beautiful women in that position. That's sexist, but it's real.
But let me ask you a question, though.
It is of value to humanity. Otherwise, if it wasn't, we'd all be looking like chimps.
That is true. But let me ask you a question, though. I'm a shit starter. I believe in, if you start something, I'm going to show you how. The only way for me to show you how ridiculous something is to show you how ridiculous something is. So if they're going around right now saying, well, if I feel like this, I should be allowed to incorporate myself in this. I think a lot of men should say they feel like women. A lot of failed college guys who never got a chance to go pro. I think to piss off the system, to shitstorm the system, they should say, I feel like a woman, and force them to let them play in the WNBA. They dominate, and they would have to either rethink their position or either end up with women not being able to go anywhere in sports in these positions because men can just drop down and take their position. What do you think on that?
It would work, but you know the flaw in it?
What's that?
What real man is going to claim to be a woman?
Yeah, there's a flaw in it, but that's what I'm saying. We need to do just like I tell the blacks how if we wanted to change the NCAA, all they got to do is wait till the Final Four and every black player sit out. Don't play. Now, I know it's difficult to do that, but somebody's got to do it.
30 years ago, a guy in Memphis whose nickname in the NBA is Big Daddy. He's not that tall, but he was a sheriff's deputy. Mm-hmm. And he and I used to talk manhood to these boys who basically, a lot of them are hood rats with talent, and they don't have any daddy in their life.
Very true.
Magic Johnson's mother and some other players' mothers organized this thing where they'd have NBA players go around the country and put on basketball camps, and this was in the early 90s. And, well, before the 90s. And I was always in there talking to them while they were playing basketball. But see, we tried to get them way back, 91, 92, to, you're on strike. You need to deal with these guys who aren't the superstars, but they're necessary for the team, and they vote in what your union's doing. So help them out with these car payments they have so you can maintain the strike. You ought to put some of your money in a fund to sustain the members so they can resist the strike. So these guys are saying they're 6 months behind, 5 months behind on their car notes, and the note holder is getting ready to tow them. So you got to hold this up. But they were too narrow-minded to understand how that went, so they got beat down. And in those days, what the owners got was a limit on how much you had to pay out for your whole team. So, you see, they need some man-up stuff. They need to think critically and analytically. They don't.
All right, I'm going to say something.
Too many of them have a situation where they're going broke because their mama looks at it. Hey, I birthed him. He better make sure I get me a new house and a new car. And my man, he needs some things too. And this kid's going broke because mamas and aunts are all trying to get all this money.
And now that is true.
It's crazy.
Well, here's what I want to talk about then. When it comes to, and since you said you saw the show earlier, I told people what they're doing is pushing confusion with this whole trans stuff. And that guy that was on the show almost said what Malik Yoba said. And just to recap what a guy that was on the show said, he said he's straight.
I went to that thing.
Yeah, he said he was straight.
To play me straight. No, if you got a dick and you like the sex with something with a dick, you're a homosexual. If the something with a dick deludes itself by claiming to be a female, you still a homosexual. If it's got a clothes fetish and dresses up like a girl and got a dick, you still homosexual if you dealing with something with a dick. By the way, I call him milk yogurt.
Somebody said they called him me lick your butt.
Yeah, that'll work too. And see, they try to get you to push that agenda in Hollywood. We want you to do a public service announcement. What is that? This thing about stop saying is gay. No, I'm not going to get involved in that. But I mean, I'm not. Fight your own battles. My people got enough things to fight for without having to go worry about somebody that's trying to upset the masculine paradigm and make where I live a hell of a place to not be. Or make the whole country emasculated so it doesn't take care of business and it forgets duty, honor, obligation, responsibility, accountability to make where you live a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic prosperity, purpose, morality and ethics, and to be brave and courageous when you need to be, and be men of peace, order, and dignity when you have anything to say about what's going on. See, I'm not going to get involved with destroying that, because you are a bunch of damn losers who got a free thing you do, and you want everybody else to be like you. You hit a good point there. I have said a long time, they hate what they are and they hate what they want to be. And the parallel, you may be too young, I don't know. But back in the 60s, black folk hated their own guts because they were objects of derision where they were shown, and everything that was good was white, so everybody wanted to be white. And then we got a clue as to what was going on. So what would we do? What did we do? I'm black and I'm proud. And that wasn't James Brown started that. We did. He just copied it. So it was I'm black and I'm proud. Well, see, they aren't proud. They got these gay pride parades, but they have parodies of what they want to be that show disdain for it. Walk around with their ass cheeks out and their dicks hung out. And what in the hell is that? And then what is the whole thing about defining yourself by the type of sex you like or what you want an ID for? See, it's like duty, honor, and obligation means you got a dick, you supposed to act like you're a man, which means women and children in life both first. And that gets to the point where the tiebreaker, the deal breaker is right on the table. You know what that is?
What's that?
When the Titanic is sinking, who's supposed to get in the lifeboats first? Women and children. Does a tranny get in the lifeboat with the women and children, or does he wait till men get in there?
Right. Where does the tranny go? Are they last?
If he's punking out and he's useless, it probably needs to go down with the boat because he ain't pulling an oar. There was a thing hit the thing today on Twitter. This brother tweeted this thing as a video. He said, man, I was driving along and I saw this woman who was having a flat tire. Instinctively, I stopped. I always do that. I said, ma'am, can I help you? And, you know, I looked at the flat tire and said, let me help you. So it stood up. She or whatever the hell, and I noticed it was taller than I expected a woman to be. And as she got closer, I said, ma'am, are you a man? And she said, what has that got to do with it? I said, well, I tell you what, change your own goddamn tire. She said, you gonna make me change my tire? Said, well, you can change your sex, you can damn sure change the tire. I change tires for women, not for some dude.
I'm using that.
Woman. You got a dick, don't you?
I'm using that. I'm stealing that. You can change the tire. You can change the sex. You can change the tire.
It's like men are conditioned because we are primates. We are male primates. Chimps have 99.9% of the same DNA we do. We diverged from them about 6 million years ago, which isn't long in biological terms. And they look like they look in the face. We look like we look in the face, which is not like chimps because we have a standard of beauty that we adhere to, which some people are trying to destroy these days. And it's not white standard. It's just pretty universal. We want our women to look fit, trim, nice boobs, nice hips, long, pretty legs, and whatever passes for a pretty face, you know. And now they want to get big balloons that look like a normal saurians escaped from a Jurassic Park. You know, from the pachyderm section, natural habitat part of the zoo. They want to change that on us. You take Sports Illustrated where they got all these fit young men, they're football players, basketball players, track stars, swimmers, golfers, and everything else, and they used to have these pretty fit-looking women in there. Well, this year they had beautiful-looking Tyra Banks, who's 50-something years old, looking fine as she wants to be in that yellow thong bikini, all right? And then you open up the page, and they got a 260-pounder on the inside cover, white, and then they got a 280-pounder on the next page, black, and then they got all these big beef animals in there. So you have all these fit young men, but you get these girls that are 300-pounders at 20 years old looking like they'll have a heart attack and a stroke. What's that got to do with fitness? See, that's a game they're putting on us. So you get back to these characters that you have here. They're trying to run this tranny thing with fluid gender to confuse people so they get used to somebody saying it. And see, they're going back to Nazi propaganda. Joseph Goebbels said, if you tell a lie long enough and loud enough, you can get anybody to believe it. A lie told once is a lie 1,000 times, it becomes the truth. Tell a lie often enough, forcefully enough, and frequently enough, and people will become inured to the fact that it is a lie and accept it as the truth and defend it as though it were the truth. Now, I don't care what the hell they do in a bedroom. That's their own goddamn business.
Yep.
But the bottom line is when you start trying to kick in the door to my damn living room and talk to me, then I got something to say about it. When you start dealing with what you do with our children, you got something to deal with it. Have you picked this stuff up on Twitter where they got all of these video clips of tranny reading hour where they got transvestites coming to read to elementary school kids? Get this.
I did a show about it.
Doing a striptease act in a public library for children's hour. If you brought in a real live stripper and they did that for children, she'd be arrested.
I did a show about that. They were promoting. They're promoting that shit like it's normal. I couldn't believe it.
I was coming out of a hotel last time I was in L.A. to do the pilots for this new show I've got, all right? So we finished up. I'm waiting for the limo. I'm outside the hotel. All I got is a roll-on. And these two 9-year-old boys were walking by holding hands, and they started kissing each other. I said, wait a minute. What are you doing? Wait, no, why are you kissing him? Well, they said it was all right to deal with your BFF and kiss him in school. What? I said, do you know what a penis is? Yeah. I said, what they're talking about is if you're supposed to be doing a gay thing, they talk about gay rights and all of that. And said, in other words, bend over, pull your underwear down, and your friend sticks his penis up your butthole. That's what they're talking about. Oh, no. And one of them threw the other one's hand down. That's what they're telling you. And the other one got it delivered. I hope they had a problem with their parents when they got in the car.
Look, I did that story, and I couldn't believe it. And they had these horrible-looking trannies saying, read to the children. And I did another story where they were talking about letting the children build these Mattel toys that are genderless, but it was all boys. They weren't pushing it on girls. They keep pushing it on boys. And I said it before, it's like what they're doing to those trannies is chemical castration. Because if you notice, a dyke will still produce a kid. I know several dykes who got kids, but those trans dudes, you don't hear about them having kids because that shit that they're doing to them is chemically castrating them, and it's making it to where they're no good to anyone. They're eunuchs. They don't serve a purpose anymore.
They're eunuchs. And the bottom line is that's exactly what they're trying to be, cross-dressing eunuchs. So what did the ancients do with eunuchs? They had them watch the reglo or the harem because they couldn't do anything with the harem. They castrated them and they amputated their dicks, and some of them they left the dicks on so they could stroke the babes without knocking them up. Because the whole thing wasn't anything other than reproduction and the political and social connections that, multiple marriages brought to the ruler.
Yes, sir.
So eunuchs could be trusted because guess what? They had no stake in the market. Narcissus, a famous Roman general, they were going to crucify him until he agreed to be castrated to save his life, because the emperor said, if you can't produce any offspring, I don't have to worry about you trying to replace me and set up a dynasty.
That's right.
You're going nowhere.
And it's a shame that we have these people pushing this agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, I got my man Judge Joe Brown, and we're going to go back for a second to the Amber Guyger situation. I broke news earlier today, and I don't know if you've heard about it, and I want to hear what you have to say. The next door neighbor of Botham John.
Amber Guyger.
Yeah,
I know of the deceased.
Yeah, the next door neighbor was found dead yesterday, shot dead. Is that just coincidence to you? He actually testified during the trial on the
Well, you know
prosecutor.
what that might have been?
What's that?
There was a hit out on the next door neighbor. The cop took the hit, got in the wrong damn apartment. Remember the testimony about the red carpet out in front of his? Was there a red carpet out in front of his apartment? Nobody else had one.
Now that's some deep
That's
shit.
speculation, but that makes sense.
It
by the way,
does.
that Johnson woman that Trump and Kimmy Slutassian got out of jail. Johnson, Kimmy girl was saying she was a poor grandmother with one bag of coke, small bag of coke, trying to save her house. Well, she wasn't a grandmother when they locked her up. She was in her 30s. And what they busted her with was the third largest haul of cocaine in American history. She had 6,600 pounds of 97% pure cocaine and $87 million in cash. 6,600 pounds, that's 3 3/4 tons of coke. 97% pure cuts out to somewhere around 18,000. That's 9 tons to 24,000 pounds. That's 12 tons of street value coke.
Damn.
That's that small bag of coke. This heifer was the drug queen pin from New Orleans to Louisville to Chicago to Kansas City to St. Louis. All of those crack babies and crackheads in the late 80s and early 90s and all of those places, she was one of the major suppliers. She represented the Mexican cartels against the Colombian cartels. Now, it was in Wikipedia for years. They went over the trial. They had all these people in the Federal Witness Protection Program that were afraid she'd have them murdered. Her co-defendant, who was her lieutenant, not the one in charge, got life, but they left him in. But she was the mastermind, and all of these other people copped out to 10 years, or whether 10-year cap on the sentences for being government witnesses. So they let her out. She was laundering money. She had hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of houses that she was trying to conceal the origin of. $87 million in cash they busted her with. She took the orders for the dope from the gangsters and got the money, and she took the dope from the cartels and exchanged the money, and she was the spider in the middle of the web, the Black Widow spider. They had that in the Wikipedia for years, but nobody looked it up. And this woman they let out of jail, this woman, poor thing, she was only 15. That was a psychopathic bitch. This girl came up with the plot of, since I'm a juvenile, they can't really do much to me. So instead of going through having to rob these guys, I'll entice them with my high yellow ass to an apartment I've got set up. And instead of just robbing them, I'm killing them and robbing them, and somebody's going to help me dispose of the bodies. Well, they busted her on the first attempt. So that's who they wanted to let out of jail, this psychopathic young bitch that was a ruthless killer, a bad seed. Wasn't anybody got put in the slave trade. She came up with the idea all by her lonesome, acquired the gun, lured the first prospect over there, gave him some alcohol laced with drugs. When he got unconscious, she didn't even have to do anything. She could have just robbed him. She shot him twice in the back of the head with her pistol. But they let her out.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, another one. People got mad at me, and I don't know what your take on it is. The girl up in, I think it was Tennessee, Sotomayor.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
So, okay, so you feel the same way okay. So I was like, because it sounds like the same. So you feel the same way I feel. That's bullshit. She shot that man in the back of the damn head, and somehow she's a victim.
Yeah. See, it's bullshit. That's that thing they're doing now. The girl was a ruthless, bad seed. I mean, it was just cold-blooded and vicious. She didn't even have to shoot. She enjoyed it.
Yes.
Said. See, I got elected to 2 8-year terms as a criminal court judge in Tennessee. These states are getting out of hand. They've got this, see, you know what their ultimate aim is. I heard them talk about it. I was a member of the class of 69 at UCLA, all right? And we had, before I left, well, I went back to go to law school, but we had 65,000 some full-time students. It was a small city. So we had all of these people who came to speak on campus. And you heard them often enough because it was outside at a place called Meyerhoff Park. It was at the foot of UCLA's famous stairs. And they had public address systems, so you could hear them a long way away. And it would be talking about how they were going to make all masculinity declared to be toxic, a little at a time, how they were going to destroy manhood because manhood was evil, it caused wars, and men needed to learn how to be emotional so they could cry and shout and let it all hang out instead of being so uptight and under self-control. So they would hold in their anger and hostility and cause war. They needed to learn how to immediately vent and emote like women so they could let it out. And so you take the apex predator, the most efficient, vicious, and ruthless killing machine the planet has invented through evolution, and you take masculinity away from it, and masculinity is that self-control mechanism where you don't do these things because you're a man. You know how the English say, I say, little boy, it's just not cricket, you know, it just isn't done. You know, men don't do this kind of thing. And that's always been a principle. The manly art of self-defense is a masculine imperative. You know, and these punks can't fight their way out of a wet paper bag, and they go for bad because, what? They've been taught they should little fan their little wrist and they should mince around looking like girls. Now, what's wrong with that? Fundamentally is this. Male birds and female birds have different plumages, right?
Yes.
Lions have manes, lionesses don't.
Yep.
Bull elephants look a lot different than female elephants. You know, bull orca have a fin 6 feet tall versus 1 2 feet tall for a female orca. All kinds of sexual dimorphism things going on. We and chimpanzees and gorillas share a lot of the DNA. A male gorilla is an 800-pound silverback, and the girls are 200 pounds. All of the chimps you see in the movies are female because a male chimp is so much stronger and bigger, he can literally rip a human's hand off without arm off, or face off without trying.
Mm-hmm.
So they use female chimps because they're smaller. So we are primates, and we've got this male distinction where certain things are masculine traits and they attract the female. The female has feminine traits and they attract the male. Now, male attire and female attire has changed, but the culture determines what's male, what's female, because when a male sees a female that's in female attire that looks attractive, he responds. Like male birds respond to female birds, and the female birds respond to the male birds. You know, it goes both ways. So there you are walking down the street with 3.8 billion years of earthly evolution operating in you, and you see something that looks like it's a woman, and you say, oh, and then it turns out to be a guy. You know, that's not quite right. That's upsetting the paradigm, and there's no reason to do it because you are a selfish, self-hating bastard who doesn't like what he is or she is. And see, remember Michael Jackson, how they pushed it, where that androgynous thing that never got bass in its voice, and it tried to switch from being average-looking black kid to looking like a white boy out of a Pokemon cartoon with that funny-looking nose that had to be amputated because he had it operated on so much he got necrotic. If you see the last videos, you can see the line between his face and the prostheses that's taped on where the makeup starts fading when he gets to sweating. And that white glove he wore, that's because they hadn't finished the laser destruction of the melanin in that hand in time. Self-hating, trying to convert from being black to white. Well, these folks self-hate from being men or women, and they try to convert to being the opposite gender. It's sickness. They hate what they are, hate what they want to be. They're being pushed because it blurs the paradigm between sexes, male and female. Forget that gender. Gender is one of these things that they took the word and they changed its meaning, and they have pushed that stuff for a few years, like homophobic. Homophobic is less than 5 years old as a word. What's on the books for a couple of 100 years is heterophobic, because why? A phobia is an unreasoning fear of something. Straight folk don't fear gay folk. They just find what they do distasteful. But you take gay folk, you know, until very recently in the modern world, they were lynched, they were imprisoned, they were fired, they were chemically castrated, they were denounced. Still, you go to the Caribbean, they kill them all the time as soon as they find out they are, just because they're considered an abomination. That is a legitimate fear that homosexuals have of heterosexuals, and it becomes easily unreasoned. So for several hundred years, they've had a word called heterophobic. But if you enter it into your smartphone, you know, it's a product of Apple and all those other folk run by the Skittles crowd who want you to taste the rainbow. It'll underline heterophobia in red, whereas if you go to an English Oxford dictionary that's 90 years old, they have the word in there. Homophobic is not in there. That's a recent creation. But now they want to say, how's he inventing the new word heterophobia? No, fool, go get a 100-year-old Oxford unabridged dictionary. You'll find it in there.
Why don't we talk about what's going on right now, which is, if you look at the Amber Guyger case, I brought it up, and you may see it differently, so I'll ask you. I brought it up. I said, look, this is less about race and more about gender. Because if you look at what's happening, okay, please speak on that. Please speak on that, please.
I agree with you. What is happening in this country is too many black folk who think they want to be about making a change are caught up in this white supremacy stuff. What is going on is the media, which is 8 or 9 out of every 10 people involved in the media are of that Skittles persuasion, trying to taste the rainbow or get you to taste it. They want to turn the white men against the black men, and I say those who behave as men. So we're all caught up in racism, white supremacy. They're all caught up in they have to protect themselves from us, when what's going on is, while all this crap is transpiring about racism, this, that, and the other, the Skittles crowd is taking over. Remember when they had the government shut down and everybody was focused on that? Mm-hmm. The government was not shut down. There was an enormous, unprecedented amount of committee work going on where bills and modifications and amendments were coming out to impact the Skittles community. That thing with Juicy Jesse, Smollett, what that was about was, guess what? That rope that he got around his neck, that the Chicago police found the video of him at a Halloween costume shop buying that very same noose for Halloween 2 months before he put it around his neck. And Kama Sutra Kamala Harris and House Negro Cory Booker, Cunt Cory, they modified this bill that had been kicking around since the 1990s. They relabeled it the Anti-Lynch Act. It did nothing to protect black folk or other minorities. It just added language that is part of the description of pedophiles, clinical description to the federal books, which had never had it before. So he was not just trying to get improved employment with Empire. He doesn't get paid that much. He only gets $600,000 a year. Hell, I got that in a week. Bullshit. So broke motherfucker, damn. He was trying to be an LGBTQ alphabet, Skittle, taste the rainbow hero. And you notice he never put it in terms of black. It was always he wanted to be a role model for young gay boys so he could teach them to stand up. Well, wow. And then look at his name. His real name is Justin Smollett. So he was calling himself Smollett. So he adopted the stage name of Jesse, but he spells it Jussie, which in French is Juicy, and Juicy. And he's calling himself Smollett now instead of Smollett, so it's Juicy Jesse. Smollett. And by the way, there's a lot of pictures of him campaigning with Kamala Harris, and I can't swear to it, but everything I've seen indicates that Kamala Harris is his aunt by marriage.
Well,
And Kamala Harris, by the way, is not black.
At all.
Her father, not at all. Her father, who is a Jamaican, but an engineer, wrote an article carried by a Jamaican periodical. He said, I'm not black, I'm Hindu, I'm a Brahmin. She's got a grandmother who had some black in her, but that's not accounted black. All of my ancestors were white plantation owners or Hindu. So her mother is a straight up Brahmin caste Hindu. So she's not black, she's a Hindu Brahmin. And by the way, they look just exactly like her. And you know what else looks exactly like her?
What's that?
You heard the Nazis talking about the Aryan supermen from the far north, blonde-haired, blue-eyed giants. Well, there are Aryans, but guess where they come from? India. And
Really?
guess what they are? They are the Indian Brahmin caste. So Kamala Harris looks like an actual Aryan. They're paper bag brown with thick, black, wavy hair. I guess what she did to Willie Brown and all the rest of them is, baby, if you do what Mama wants you to do, we'll do on the middle of page 27, and we'll follow up with the top of page 55.
So if we're dealing with this, and I got to ask you something else then. Let's go down the conspiracy theory road. You seem like you don't mind driving down there, and it's not a one-way street. We can come back if we fuck up and go down another one. Here we go. The woman who was the judge was also endorsed by the Chicago police. I mean, not the Chicago, but the Dallas Police Union.
Well, let me just cut you off there. Every judge I know running for office is trying to get the police union's endorsement.
Yes.
Why? Because judges are forbidden by codes of ethics from personally raising money. So if you get the cops to support you, you have poll workers and they raise money for you. So every judge probably running for office tried to get the police endorsement. That's normal. That's just, SOP, standard operational procedure. So that really doesn't say anything. That just goes with the territory.
So there's
I don't like what she did, but
so there's no conflict of interest there.
To get the police. I tried to get the local police department's endorsement. I couldn't, but I got the Black Police Association endorsement.
See, it wasn't for lack of trying. What I got to ask though, is there no conflict of interest when one of those is in front of you though?
No, you're not supposed to do that. That's like somebody saying, I'll say this. Lawyers know each other, all right? You can't help but do it. And see, being a lawyer in private practice, on week one, you may be trying a case where the plaintiff is X, okay? Week two, you may be trying the same case where the defendant is X. So, in other words, it ain't nothing personal. It's like in England, for example, a lawyer cannot reject a proposed client if you are a barrister. You have to take whoever wants you, whether you like them or not. So the lawyers tend to be friends. But how many times have you had a very acrimonious debate with a friend or put good money down betting on a sports game or tried to beat him at bowling or golf or tennis, you know, or go out and have a contest and you compete wholeheartedly? See, lawyers are not supposed to take this personal. When I was an adjunct law professor, for example, I would assign half the class to represent a defense position and half to represent a plaintiff's position. And then the day of the exam, I'd make them switch. Professor, that's not fair. We prepared. No, you have to prepare the case. That means you know both sides. So if you know both sides and the law pertaining to both sides, and you are not emotionally involved, but you are objective, detached, and analytical, you can take either side. So, okay, let's suck it up. You now represent the defendant instead of the plaintiff. You now represent the plaintiff instead of the defendant. See, that's the way it goes.
So
your ethics say that even though you know somebody, that has nothing to do with it. Even though you know the police are supposed to follow the law. If you are a good policeman, you bust a cop who's not following the law. You know, there are some cops that are known for being honest cops. An example, in Shelby County, because they have helicopters, they haven't allowed police chases in 25, going on 30 years.
Yeah, there's no reason to chase them.
No reason to do it. You got a helicopter at 8,000 feet that's just cruising along following them when the other cars are on, you know, remote routes that will get vectored to wherever the hell they stop. Well, okay, this kid, 15, stole his brother's car, right? He was around, but he stole his brother's car. He got scared, and this Millington cop chased him, and the sheriff's department and Memphis police were saying, stand down, no chases. He chased him anyway. Well, anyway, the kid skidded up into a gas station at the top of the hill, got out with his hands up. At the same time, some Memphis and Shelby County officers were pulling up. They witnessed this Millington cop get out of the car, mad at this boy, slammed him across the head once with his pistol, slammed it again, the pistol rolls off, shoots him in the back of the head. The cops on the spot arrested this other cop, cuffed him up, disarmed him, and charged him with murder.
Wow, I never heard that case.
See, so cops are supposed to arrest somebody for a homicide if they committed or committing a crime. They prosecute each other. Same way the judge, even though she gets the endorsement, that endorsement only applies to lawful conduct by the cops. When it comes off, what does the judge act as? What else do the police have? And what the police hate? Internal affairs.
Mm-hmm.
IA. Internal Affairs investigates police who are doing wrong. The Internal Affairs investigators are cops. And by the way, I find something interesting. Cops who are rookies, been in the squad car only, they can't stand defense lawyers and they are pro prosecution and everything. Experienced cops and detectives drink whiskey with guess who? Not prosecutors. Unlike the TV shows, cops drink whiskey and drink beer with defense lawyers because they've had their asses run over the coals in front of Internal Affairs or jacked up in under investigations, so they know how it works. So they want somebody to defend them. That's strange.
Well, it just
How
seems
come
to.
that cop hanging around? Isn't he a defense lawyer? Yeah. Well, why is he hanging around with all the defense lawyers? Cops hang around with defense lawyers because they know better.
Well, it just scares me though to know that they have that kind of commingling with each other. Because look, if you fight to get these cops endorsement, I get it. But then now that you have these cops endorsement, you remember when you talked about how these judges can be voted in and voted out, and if we really care, we should become a part of the process, which I 100% agree with, and I talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
But it seems like
Yeah.
that cop knows exactly what, I mean, that judge knows exactly what you're talking about as well, because they know I'd rather have the endorsement and the backing of the cops than the damn people who voted me in, because the people who voted me in didn't technically vote me in because they didn't vote at all. So the power is with the cops.
Okay. I won every single precinct in the contested election in Shelby County. My opponent's mother owned the only daily newspaper, the Commercial Appeal. They badmouthed me in editorial saying turned me out for 6 straight days, including the Sunday editorial. Well, the people around here said anybody that this nasty paper doesn't like, we like. So I'm the only person since 1863 to get every precinct in the county in a contested election. Now, I did not have the police union's endorsement.
Right.
I did not have the sheriff's deputy union's endorsement, but I still kicked ass. It's a choice some people make. See, I went out and burnt up shoe leather, shaking hands with a whole lot of people.
But you knew your constituency at that moment.
You've already given me 2 of these personally. I know I'm voting for you. I'm telling all my friends and family, here, do me a favor, pass that on, read it, pass it on to your family.
But you knew.
See, yeah, I know everybody. So.
But you knew your constituency were the. But you knew your constituency at that moment were the people.
But some people do because they're not people persons. You have too many judges out there who want to be judges because they couldn't cut it trying a case as a lawyer. We have a lot of judges who want to cloak themselves in the authority of the office because they have no personal authority. You've got some good people. For a while in Memphis, we had H.T. Lockett, and H.T. Lockett, the first time I really peeped him, he was getting ready to punch a desk sergeant in the jaw. You know, and he's the one that got all the desegregation cases filed. He's been practicing since 1951. He was Mr. Big. He put a whole lot of people in office. And finally, he said, I didn't want to be the damn judge. They prevailed on him, and so I'm glad I became one. I found out, you know, I didn't have to go sweat all of the, where am I getting what I got to pay for the secretary and make all this overhead match, you know. And then we had a guy named Otis Higgs, who was a damn good brother. He was a criminal court judge. We had a nerd named Arthur Bennett. He's a nerd, but he would say, the court ain't going to stand this. Justice for East Memphis going to be the same as justice for North and South Memphis. He led the war. Black judges walked out of the judicial conference because they were talking nonsense we thought had a racist application. Public didn't know about that, but it was Arthur Bennett, the nerd, who was trying to lead it.
So there's a misconception.
But we don't have those kind now.
Yes.
We got one brother, black guy, former prosecutor, former defense lawyer. He's a damn good judge. But, you know, we got one sister, but she got in because of politics. And quite frankly, when she got sworn in as a judge of criminal court, that's the first time she'd set foot in the criminal courtroom.
I gotta ask you something, and I don't really mean to offend you, but tell me if I'm right or wrong. To become a judge, many people think of it as an advancement. It's not an advancement, is it? You didn't get kicked up.
No, it's a retirement.
That's what okay, all right.
And it's also for some, I need to do something about this bullshit that's going on. I got to change this shit. And you say, I'm listening to all these stupid assholes that I got to deal with. Some of them are cool, a lot of them aren't. So I'm going to do something to deliver justice. So it becomes a cause.
Because you can be a defense attorney that never won and decide to be a judge and still be a judge, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I was just making sure.
See, it's like, for example, we have a federal judge who's on the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. Her husband became district attorney. They had to delay the swearing-in ceremonies for 2 hours because he didn't know where the Crumble Courthouse was. He'd never been. When she got appointed judge, she had put him through law school, had some kids, went to law school, graduated at 29 years old. When she got out, she took the bar. She passed the bar. A week before she got sworn in, she turned 30 years of age. In Tennessee, you can't be a circuit court judge unless you're 30 years old. So she turned 30. She got sworn in, and 3 days later, the governor, Lamar Alexander, who ran for president as a Republican, or candidate for president as a Republican, he appointed her a circuit court judge. So 3 days after she got sworn in to the bar in November, and she just graduated from law school in June, taking the bar in September, she becomes a circuit judge. So when she walks in to preside, she knows less about what's going on than anybody in the courtroom. Gentlemen, the court has no idea how many challenges you're supposed to take. So just take as many as you want. So Ronald Reagan, St. Ron the Reagan, well, to be politically correct, what he does is, guess what? After she's been on the state bench for 6 months and created disaster after disaster, he appoints her a federal judge. So she ain't even been out of law school a year. As federal judge, took her 25 years of screwing up the public before she knew what she was doing. With due respect. You know, that's the way they roll.
Okay, somebody asked
juvenile court judge for 50-some years in Shelby County, dropped out of the 6th grade. He was prohibited from hearing cases unless everybody gave him written permission. Why? Because, guess what? He was not capable of understanding the law because he only had a 6th grade education. But he presided over the court for 50-some years, and he appointed all of these lawyers who were friends, who were nephews of some of his gay boyfriends.
Someone asked.
He couldn't hear cases.
Someone asked.
They were appointed as referees to do what he's supposed to do. It doesn't all have to work out right. It's a travesty. So you don't have to know what the hell you're doing to be a judge. But the good ones are so obvious when you compare them with the bad ones.
Someone,
like they got one judge, Chris Kraft. That person, if dumb was intelligence, he would be a genius, but he's just dumb. He's not very intelligent. He was a prosecutor in my courtroom. He has no sense. He's pompous, he's arrogant, unlearned, unlettered, and stupid. And he's done so much to the black community to hurt it, where at this point, white folks are only 28% of the registered voters in the county.
Someone asked a question, and they want to know, do you have to be a lawyer in order to become a judge?
You didn't at one point, but you do now in most states. You have, in most states, to be a state judge, you have a requirement that you be at least 30 years old so you get some kind of experience in life. But in today's world, 30 years of age is young.
Yes.
My colleague, Judge Judy, just turned 30 years of age, just out of law school, been practicing in a firm for about 6 months when Mayor Koch got authority to appoint some judges over a domestic court where lawyers were not permitted to practice, so he appointed her. She was all happy at the time, look what I did. I jumped over everybody. I'm a judge, but she got stuck there. So she's never had a jury trial. She's never filed an appeal. She's never argued a motion. She's never had a bench trial where she was the lawyer. But she presided over this domestic court where if a defendant or a plaintiff or anybody before the court was dissatisfied, they requested a new trial, and they got a brand new trial in front of a real court where there were judges and juries. You know, and lawyers. So she's arrogant. She always used to run around saying people will respect me. They didn't respect me. Now that I'm as wealthy as I am, when I stand on my pocketbook, I'm 7 feet tall. You know, she's 4 feet 6 inches tall. She's got a little Napoleonic complex, and they love her in Hollywood because she downs men.
Yes.
And she's got the Jewish mother thing going, and 85% of the people working in the industry are Jews. So, you know, I mean, that's their right. Nothing against the Jews or anything. It's just a fact of life.
Yep.
If you're in control in Hollywood, you're likely to be Jewish and gay, or bisexual, or lesbian.
Now, I was told by a young
1 out of 10 purports to be straight.
Now, I was told by a young lady who she is a judge, and I mean not a judge, but she practices in Alabama. And she said in Alabama there's no requirement to be a lawyer if you're a probate judge. What's the difference?
Well, yeah, like I said, some places there is no requirement.
What's the difference of what's a probate
that's
judge?
What you have.
What's a probate judge? I don't know the terminology. What is the difference between that judge?
Probate judge is, let's say somebody dies and they didn't leave a will, or let's say they left a will and somebody's saying he was 96 years old with a 23-year-old wife. She unduly influenced him, and we're his children and grandchildren. We got cut out. Or a family's got a squabble going on and it needs resolution. Or let's say a child gets hurt in an accident and there is a recovery, and one of the parents or both parents become trustees for the child, and they have to file an accounting of what happens with the money in the bank for the child, all right? So, yeah, that's what probate judges do.
Ah, okay. Oh, okay. I got the audience wants to ask you this question, and I think it's a really good question, ladies and gentlemen. We're live with Judge Joe Brown. I don't want to keep him too long, but I want to ask you this. Donald Trump seems like he's fallen into some legal discussions, and the people are trying, the Democrats want him impeached. Do you think they have a legal leg to stand on?
No, they don't. Let me tell you what impeachment is.
Mm-hmm.
You are presumed innocent until you're proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to put it in issue until you get indicted or formally charged, right?
Right.
An impeachment is only a formal accusation. Once someone is impeached, they're tried before the U.S. Senate, and 2/3 of the Senate, that's 75 out of 100 senators, have to vote for confirmation of the impeachment accusations.
Wow.
Now, with this Republican-dominated Senate, do you think there's any real opportunity of 75 of those senators voting to convict Trump of the articles of impeachment? No. No chance in hell.
That's
so
crazy.
Why are they wasting their damn time? They're saying it needs to be a matter of making a statement. No, you're just bullshit because you're a bunch of weak punk-ass fools who haven't done a damn thing for anybody but the Skittles Club, and you bamboozle black folk and everybody else into giving you a vote, and they get nothing. You front off for high finance on Wall Street. You front off for the gay crowd, and nobody else gets a damn thing out of it.
You know,
okay, let's raise some hell. The only candidate you had that was worth a damn was Bernie Sanders, and he just had a heart attack. So, fake Indian, Native American, fake Negro, house Negro, third string, bench warmer, Biden. And by the way, what they're talking about indicting him for is very interesting. I'm not indicting, impeaching him for is very interesting. Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution says the chief executive, that's the president, amongst other things, shall, that's the imperative, quote, enforce the law of nations, unquote. Also, they say in several locations of the Constitution, the chief executive shall enforce the laws of the land. One of the ones that is toward the end of the Constitution says treaties ratified by the Senate become part of the law of the land. Well, the U.S. has several ratified treaties with the Ukraine, also with Interpol and other countries to support Interpol. That's the international police. And that includes the investigation, apprehension, and extradition of criminal elements. So you've got a situation in the Ukraine where certain leftist newspapers are saying that's not true, but the fact of the matter it is, you had an administration that was investigating a certain entity that hired Biden's son to be an executive and negotiate with the Ukrainians when Biden was fronting for the White House, negotiating with the Ukrainians. And what did that amount to? Well, Biden in January gave a recorded speech to some supporters, and he said, well, frankly, I bribed them, and I told them if they didn't get rid of that prosecutor, they were going to lose $6 billion in U.S. loan guarantees. Now, the vice president can't do that, but the president can. So implicit on that is the president, Barack Obama, was complicit in this scheme. But their dodge was that the prosecutor in question was not doing enough to ferret out crime, so they demanded that he be relieved of duty and fired. Well, he was the one that was trying to bring Biden's son to justice and try him for criminal activity. Also, what's going on in China is Biden's same son with the same outfit has been accused of offering bribes to the Chinese. So as president, it's his duty to, quote, enforce the law of nations, enforce the treaties, and the treaties, amongst other things, say that the United States shall cooperate with foreign entities in the investigation, apprehension, and prosecution of certain categories of criminals. Bribery and extortion is one of those. Biden claimed to have done that out of his own mouth, and it was recorded. That was because his son would have gone to a Ukrainian jail where they do not have presumption of innocence until proven guilty. So they want to bring articles of impeachment against the president for doing his sworn duty. That's interesting. And meanwhile, the dumb shits bring forth all this stuff on Biden. I don't like Trump, but I mean, let's not be ridiculous. Be careful what you ask for. You just might get it. So they want to return their favor to the Republican Party that was way wrong when they tied up what would have been one of our better presidents behind some allegations that he got pussy. From Monica Lewinsky, who was in a contest with a screwed up mama with the complicity of her daddy, that she would screw a more important person or have sex with a more important person than her mom. So I met them personally, and I used to have a Polaroid picture I took of her daddy's Mercedes. It had a bumper sticker on the back. This is a daddy's Mercedes that said, "My daughter sucked the president."
You lie.
She wasn't complaining. She talked to this lesbian chick, Linda Tripp, and Linda Tripp, against the laws of the state she was living in, recorded the conversation. And that's how this thing came out. Monica Lewinsky was not upset. Paula Jones was upset and had filed a lawsuit.
Paula Jones was upset that her nose was so long.
The brightest bulb in the room, and instead of objecting and insisting that there be an interlocutory appeal on the issue, They went ahead and let him answer questions dealing with, have you ever had sex with any other person besides your wife? That's none of their goddamn business until they show relevancy. Yes, if they had lost, they would have had to pay attorney fees. But the President of the United States didn't have a deep enough pocket to take care of the opposite's attorney fees in the event that was found contrary to them. It was stupid lawyering. And what happened, he didn't lie because they asked the stupid lawyers representing Paula Jones, who were really ignorant. They were asked to set forth a definition of sex. And instead of using the classic language, including but not limited to the following, they just put down, we define sex as so on and so on. And interestingly enough, they left out oral sex.
So he actually didn't lie.
He didn't lie.
I did not have sex with that woman.
But the government was tied up for 3 years behind that crap. So the Democrats, I suppose, want to return the favor and look equally stupid by going after Trump. They can't stand Trump because he's a man. And he said, yeah, I grabbed the pussy. Now, how many men have not said something like that, talking to somebody, a man to man, when you just woof it? Exactly. And by the way, it wasn't said publicly. It was confidentially, but some fool recorded it. Some punk ass. Like some of those people you had on earlier today, raised the man code and recorded it. Now, I had a former mother-in-law who had a beauty salon. And I know from having my ears get hot listening to these babes while I was reading the magazine, waiting on my mother-in-law to come out so I could do what my then wife wanted me to do for her mama. I heard women talk about, girl, look at him. Ooh, he got a package on him. Girl, look at that. And the women talk just as foul as the guys do.
Yes,
so
sir.
Come off it. That is nothing but hypocrisy by this bunch that doesn't even like being men and women. They hate what they are and hate what they want to be, so they're trying to create confusion.
Thank you. I got to say something, though. I think that the reason they're doing it, because you just taught me something, and I believe you probably taught, I'd say 75% of people who are listening and in society in general, what the word impeachment means. See, I hear impeachment and I think Nixon gone. You are saying impeachment doesn't mean that. It's just the charges. I think the Democrats understand.
Clinton, but he didn't get convicted.
Right. I think the Democrats understand that word holds more weight to ignorant people like me, and will think that if they bring the articles of impeachment, then that means he's already guilty, because the word to the average citizen, you think impeachment. You remember Nixon had to resign to escape the impeachment process, which he believed he would.
Well, what he did was he worked up a deal. They got Agnew. Agnew got indicted federally and in Maryland, and he wound up actually doing some time. So Agnew resigned. So they needed a new vice president. So under the laws that they have, the amendments to the Constitution, that person is the Speaker of the House, who was Jerry Ford. All right, Jerry Ford became the vice president. Nixon said, I will nominate you for vice president if you agree that if I resign and you take over being president, you will pardon me. Now, one thing that everybody has to keep in mind relative to a lot of this crap about what they're going to do with Mueller and this, that, and the other, Trump, somebody. Under American law, it has been long established that the President of the United States has absolute and unquestioned power and authority to pardon or commute anyone he feels like doing. There is nothing that can be said. So all of these people they're trying to hold against him, they don't need to open their mouth, because he can pardon them anytime he wants. They don't even have to be convicted of the crime. He can pardon them for the conviction, for the commission of the alleged commission of the crime.
Exactly. So it's a show. I said last night, a lot of this stuff is just optics.
Show.
It's a show.
It's theater.
Yep.
And see, people say he's impeached, that'll get rid of. No, it's not. It's just saying we charge you. We're going through a sham. We know that the entity that's charged with doing this, convicting or not, is not going to do it. That's like a chicken shit prosecutor says, I know no jury's going to convict him, but I just want to put him through the trouble.
Yep.
And that's done. So
I want to irritate him.
They're going to get 75 senators to vote to convict Donald Trump. Even if the Democrats got every Democrat and 4 or 5 Republicans, the Republicans don't want to revolt amongst their rank and file. So, I mean, if they got 60, that's still not enough. They got to get 75.
The bar is high. The bar is very high.
You know how many people have been successfully convicted of impeachment in U.S. history?
Is it just one?
No, not presidents. Anybody.
Oh, anybody. That you got me on that one.
3.
Hell, that's like the number of cops that's been actually arrested in Dallas was only 3, and one of them was a black cop who was shooting somebody who was stealing from him, and he did 10 years.
Yeah, but you see, there have only been 3 people impeached and convicted in the history of the United States, and they were minor officials.
Did they do any time?
No, they just got removed from office. You don't do any time. You just get removed from office.
Okay, so it's not actually breaking a law. It's just breaking the ethics.
Yeah, you get removed from office.
Got it. Most of us don't know this, Judge. Honestly, most of us don't know this.
The press is trying to drive this shit up. Like, for example, there is no authority to declare war on international terrorism. But Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, again, which is a very interesting article, very interesting section, says that it shall be the obligation of the Navy basically to pursue, eradicate, and to pursue, suppress, and eradicate piracy wherever found in the world. All right? So treaties have declared that hijacking airplanes is piracy. So what happened on 9/11? 4 airplanes got hijacked. That's piracy. Now, what does that say? Well, what does the Marine Corps hymn say? From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. What's that Tripoli about? Well, 1806, the Barbary pirates were preying upon American shipping. The English had said, screw you, you're no longer part of it in England. You've got out of the empire, you're on your own. So the U.S. revitalized its navy. And what they did is they went to Tripoli, they invaded the place, and they suppressed piracy. They fought the Barbary pirates, and they got the bait of Tripoli. And they jacked him up, put him under control. That's fighting piracy. So when they went after bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, that's fighting piracy. And right now, the U.S. maintains a heavy patrol off of East Africa to control piracy. Why? Every civilized country since ancient Rome, the Phoenicians before that, etc., Egypt, they had patrols to suppress piracy that preyed upon shipping. So the U.S. is just following an ancient tradition that is codified in the U.S. Constitution that requires that piracy be pursued, suppressed, and eradicated. No terrorism, suppression of piracy. So you can't declare war on anything but a sovereign entity, but the Constitution mandates and requires that you suppress and eradicate piracy wherever found on the high seas. They didn't know anybody would ever invent airplanes 150 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Or, 140 years later. But they did.
Well, it's funny here. We go back to optics. We go back to optics, and I gotta ask you this then. we talked about, I talked about on my show the Jeffrey Epstein thing, and somebody put in the comment section just a minute ago, they said, rest in peace, Jeffrey Epstein coverage. And they said like 2019 to 2019, saying that we were all invested in that, and then it went away. Optics. We're all invested in the Amber Guyger thing. It'll go away. Optics. We were all invested. What I think they do is rile us up to let us down so we'll move on to something else so they can then keep doing whatever it is that they were doing in the first place, because we now feel like it's like if you say, well, we got a lot of roaches and somebody come in and step on one, you don't see any more. You don't pay attention that the rest of the roaches were behind the wall. The light made them stay behind the wall. You saw the one, the person who stepped on it, they don't have to now go inside the wall to get rid of the eggs or any of the larvae or none of that crap. And now the people feel like it's safe to eat, it's safe to do everything. Do you believe a lot of what the government does is the optics to make us go on to something else?
Well, let's put it this way. Most of the elected government officials, federal, state, local, are bisexual, or they're sycophants for that Skittles thing. They want to taste the rainbow and help it. That's why the politics look so screwed up, because it's in their interest for it to look screwed up so they can use the smoke screen as camouflage and do what they want to do behind the scenes. That's like when they had the government shutdown, they had an enormous amount of committee activity bringing LGBT type bills to the forefront or getting clauses stuck in to other legislation. They control the media, so they are not going to let something that interferes with their plan or their agenda stay out there too long. Now, the second factor that comes in as to why this goes on is you've got 22, 23-year-olds sitting around in the studios for local stations, and they are checking the web to see if anything of interest pops up. So it's a slow news day. They grab something and they throw it out there, and then it goes viral, so to speak, amongst the news outlets all across the country. Like, we look at stuff as a general public like, oh my God, this is so horrible. Well, for me as a professional dealing with it, I said, you do realize that this one case they focused on is only one of about 35 or 40 that have occurred this week. And every week there are 35 or 40, but you focus on one just because it was a slow news day and they picked it. And see, there's another problem. Years and years ago, they'd have 15 minutes as a public service where they'd give you the bulletins for the news, and you had a morning and an evening paper, several types thereof in any large city. So people would read about it, and then television said a word about it, and they didn't go back to it. It was really, really important. They would give you an interruption and an update, and they wouldn't pontificate on it. They wouldn't give opinions on it. There was a guy that started this opinion thing on television. His name was George Putnam. He stayed around until he was in his late 90s. He could afford it because he was independently wealthy. You know how he got wealthy?
How's that?
He was married to this aviatrix, Amelia Earhart. And when she went down with that plane crash and went missing, he had taken out quite a few $1 million worth of life insurance on her, and he got it all. Nobody knew. I mean, they never put it out that he was Amelia Earhart's husband, but his name was George Putnam. So in the early 60s, he started this thing, and this reporter's humble opinion today, this was an intolerable event. So he wouldn't just report news, he would report it in the context of his particular agenda. So that's how it started. That was Channel 11 in Los Angeles. Then what happened is CNN. Somebody had a bright idea to do CNN 24/7 news. Well, it was going bust. It was about to go bankrupt. It wasn't working. And then they had Gulf War. So a Gulf War with all this stuff going on 24/7 and CNN was able to report and show footage of a cruise missile flying down the middle of the street outside of the 8th floor hotel room occupied by the CNN reporters. That was worldwide. It put them on the map. But after the Gulf thing was over, wound down, what do you do to fill 24/7 news? There's not enough to fill it. So they started putting talking heads on there who would pontificate, talking stupid nonsense. And this stupid nonsense would come across, George, what do you think's going on here? Tommy, I don't know. Well, the cabin's burning. Yeah, it's burning pretty badly. That's not good, is it? No. Well, what do you think happened? I don't really know, Alan, but maybe what went on with so-and-so. Well, yeah, I don't know either, but maybe that's right, but maybe this happened. So you look at a smoldering log cabin for 45 minutes. This is when this cop went rogue out on the West Coast in L.A. And
yeah, you talking about my boy Christopher Dorner.
Same thing you're doing, and you got to look at this smoldering cabin for 45 minutes while they speculate on nonsense. Absolutely crazy. And see, the other thing is they had to ramp it up and go straight tabloid so you would stay tuned because it's commercial television. And they get money from their ratings based on the advertising dollars that come in based on ratings. So they have taken a news function protected under the First Amendment, and they have turned it into a primary entertainment. Now, what does entertainment have to do with it? Well, 2,000 years ago, Caesar said, give them bread and circuses. Done pane e circassiae. Give them bread and circuses, and the mob won't give a damn what their betters do. So keep them fed and entertained. Give them gladiatorial contests. Modern translation, circuses were gladiator-type context and chariot races. Mm-hmm. Modern translation, NASCAR, NFL, NBA, MLB, golf, tennis, all kinds of entertainments that will keep the peasantry distracted. They will know the floor scores, shooting percentages of their favorite gladiatorial teams, but they won't know a damn thing about the issues relating to those things that determine whether they can afford the TV set to watch these entertainments. And CNN, instead of being a source of information, a reliable source of accurate and objective information, becomes an entertainment that pushes the far left Skittles/rainbow agenda.
Well, think about how crazy we are when we will watch TV and complain about judges and lawyers, but in our real lives won't go do anything as simple as you stated earlier, vote your judge in or out of office. They won't even know who that person is. They won't know who their tax commissioner is. They will know nothing about the things that actually impact them daily. But they'll know about so-and-so's field goal percentage, how many drop passes this guy got. They know fantasy everything. We need to start fantasy politics. Maybe that'll help if we start doing fantasy politics.
Yeah. And when are we going to learn? See, aside from the intolerable position that black people were excluded from this process and enslaved, they had something that was wise. They restricted the franchise even to white people, to those who had a vested interest in the system. In other words, you had to have so much land that you had the rights to, or you had to have so much money in the bank, or you had to be a practitioner of a profession. They didn't just want to give the vote to what they called the riffraff, the mob. That's why they had senators who served 6-year terms who were appointed, not elected, so that they could take the passions of the masses and cool them off. You had the House of Representatives that was elected every 2 years. They were supposed to reflect the passions of the masses. Now, that was nothing new. That was taken from Republican Rome, where they had the Senate, and then they had the House of Plebes. In other words, the commoner's house. All right? So it was an old thing, and it worked. The only other thing you could vote for was electors who would select the president. That was so that people who actually knew these individuals would become involved, who would assess their abilities to govern, who would not be caught up in passion, but could objectify the process of selecting the chief executives. It's like a corporate board, in other words, selecting the CEO. There were vast distances. There were no telegraphs. News traveled as fast as a speeding horse, or later a primitive locomotive that could go 30 miles an hour, and tracks weren't laid, or by a canal barge. So you had wise people, supposedly, who would select the guy that ran the government, to which president. Later, they passed an amendment so senators were elected by popular vote. So you had three things. Representatives in the House of Representatives, and you had senators. So you had representatives and senators in Congress. The House and the Senate together are said to be Congress, so we bastardize the term and talk about congressmen. Well, okay. We now get to talking about why don't we abolish the Electoral College? Well, there are good and sound reasons for having the Electoral College, because supposedly what happens is you vote for electors who've taken the time to really scrutinize what the presidential candidates are up to. Well, as a pragmatic matter, they pretty much rubber stamp what they've promised to do. In other words, I promise to vote for this guy if you elect me as an elector. And in fact, if you look at your ballot for the presidential elections, it'll say, who do you vote for the electors? The electors of, this, that, and the other candidate for the Democrats, or this, that, and the other, Donald Trump for the Republicans. So you're voting for the electors so they take stupid out of the situation and start bringing some wisdom to bear. Now, the other good reason for why they have electors is this, and it's also got to do with Trump's thing about declaration of citizenship on the census. Now, I've been through 50 years of censuses as an adult, okay? And every one of them, I got asked whether I was a U.S. Senator. Back when I had the TV show, I went through two censuses. And I had houses in multiple states. So in each state, they asked me. And on some of the ones I got, they wanted to know, were my parents citizens? Was I born in America type citizen? Did I claim through parentage? Was I born in a foreign country? Why? Because that determined whether I could vote. Now, black people ought to love the idea that somebody's asked, are you a citizen? Because it is. See, that 3/5 thing, it did not say that black people were 3/5 of a man. What it says is, for purposes of apportioning representation in Congress, 3/5 of the total number of slaves shall be counted toward the apportionment. It said nothing about a black is 3/5 of a man. It said 3/5 of the slaves held in bondage shall be considered for apportioning representation in the House of Representatives. So that's where that came in. So when you say we can't ask whether you're a citizen, California, New York, and Illinois have a vested interest in having their illegals counted, because even though those illegals and non-citizens can't vote, that will add to the number of congressmen that those states get. So in other words, just like black people being counted in the census counts that determined the number of representatives that the South got, even though we couldn't vote, The same thing will happen in California, Illinois, and New York if you don't get to ask the citizenship, because they will just count the raw numbers. And California is trying to pick up 6 congressmen, New York 3, and Illinois 2. So they will have a disproportionate amount of representation. So what does that mean? That means that people who are in California will have a disproportionate impact on what happens across the nation. Well, you say they got the most people, but that's why we had the Civil War, because the South, even though they were fighting for the despicable point of being able to keep slaves, they went and split off, and they had the Civil War because they were outshouted by the situation. So right now we have, each state has 2 senators, no matter what its population. But based on what the census says, a state has a given number of representatives that can vote. So what happens is, let's say they want to legitimate pedophilia. Well, you don't want them getting extra representation that is not subject to vote confirmation, because a lot of the people counted won't be able to vote because they're non-citizens. They will be able to say, oh, we're going to legitimate pedophilia. Now, you may be living in Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, Arkansas, Norfolk, South Carolina, Louisiana, Florida, Illinois, Oklahoma, Wyoming, South, North Dakota. You may be living up in Massachusetts. You may be living in wherever you live, but, you know, you might not want to have pedophilia legitimated. So we have control so the big states don't get to bully the small states. By the way, the interesting thing about the Civil War is more people got killed in the Civil War than got wounded or killed in all the rest of the wars, World War I, II, Korea, the Nam, and everything else combined. That's
Really?
quite a total. Now, what's the death toll for Afghanistan and Iraq? Oh, about, 5,600, 6,200 dead? Right? Somewhere around there?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Well, you know why they have Gettysburg is such a place? You know how many folk died on one side in the 4-day battle? 62,000 folk on the Union side, and 56,000 on the Union side and 62,000 on the Confederate side in 4 days.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Cold Harbor. The Union casualties were 12,000 dead in 32 hours.
Jesus.
Normandy, they only lost 8,000 in Normandy. But this is back when. Shiloh, up here, the first big battle, Grant won up in Tennessee. I've been up to the battlefield. They had almost 9,000 people die in one day.
So, because we think of D-Day as like this, my generation thinks of D-Day as the worst thing in the world. No one would ever tell us that what you just said, that there were more people who died within hours in the Civil War than died on D-Day, storming the beaches of Normandy, and they were literally running up against machine gun fire and mortar.
Let's take this. Remember, the casualties for the Civil War are greater than the combined casualties of all other wars the U.S. has been in. Let's take something about air crews. In the 8th Air Force, World War II, for a 16-month period, you know what the death rate was? 52,000 dead airmen in 16 months. The Civil War beat that shit. The Battle of the Bulge, you've heard of that, right?
Yes.
Okay. D-Day, we talked about the D-Day casualties. The death toll for the Battle of the Bulge was 68,000 dead in 3 weeks. American dead. See? And we talk about, oh my God, there's 6,200 people died in Afghanistan and Iraq. Big deal. That's D-Day. One day. That doesn't come up to the 100-some thousand in Gettysburg on both sides. That doesn't come up to the 60-some thousand in 3 weeks in the Ardennes in the Battle of the Bulge. See, it's all relative.
But I wonder why somebody said optics again. I wonder why we push World War II more than we push the Civil War numbers like that. Is it because we had the visuals of World War II, which is why we tried? Because what did they call it?
But the Union Army that was commanded by General Sherman was 102,000 troops. The total Union Army, 40% of which was black by the end of the Civil War, was only 250,000 troops. Do you know how many U.S. citizens were in uniform for World War II? 18 million. Now, one of the things about Vietnam they didn't tell us, we all think of it as a little small third world country. Vietnam was the 5th largest country in the world when we were over there. They had 120 million people in Vietnam. We only had 198 million.
Damn.
You know how many people were in Nazi Germany? There were only 60 million damn Nazis in World War II. And you know how many troops they had occupying Germany at the end of the war? 12 million Americans, God knows how many goddamn Russians,
right,
and a whole bunch of French and Canadians and Brits.
For 60 million
Eisenhower commanded 12 million people.
Wow.
That's why they make such a big deal.
Again, the optics.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And see, they weren't all respecting the human life. They said they're acceptable casualties as the generals learn how to command their men so they don't get so many killed. See, it's all relative.
Here's a funny part about World War II is like, we don't talk about it, but the Russians did all of the dirty work on the ground in World War II. You don't hear about that.
They certainly did.
Why don't we hear about that?
The biggest contributions to the knocking the Nazis the hell out of the box was the Russian Army and the T-34 tank and the U.S. Army Air Force, not the B-17s and B-24s, but the P-51. The P-51 Mustang that destroyed the Luftwaffe.
Yeah, because they couldn't keep up with them at first, and then that plane gave us the edge over when the Germans were doing the Blitzkrieg, correct?
Yeah, so the Americans' tank was a piece of shit, the Sherman. The T-34 was a decent tank. They had a thing called the Stalin tank that was just one huge bad fucker. The Americans got in 20 T-26 M26s, which were a decent tank the last 4 months of the war, and they kicked ass, but it was too late. On average, it took, I think the death toll was, well, let's see, the casualty count was on the average to take out a German Panther or a Tiger tank. The Americans would lose 4 to 5 Shermans. And on average, they had a 5-man crew. They'd lose 3 1/4 men every time. That's just the way it averaged out. For every tank they lost, and it would take 4 to 5 American tanks to kill 1 German tank. That was just unacceptable. But we had 155 millimeter cannon, the long time they called it. We had magnificent indirect fire calculations using the math and primitive computers. We had the P-51 Mustang to destroy the Luftwaffe and the P-47 Thunderbolt to wipe everything else out. The B-17s and B-24s essentially acted as bait to draw off the Luftwaffe so the P-51s could shoot them down. Now, let's talk about those P-51s. We all know the Tuskegee Airmen, the 332nd, right?
Mm-hmm.
What most people don't know is it's been officially declared that the highest scoring unit for the last 9 months of World War II in the European theater was the 332nd. They had all these American white aces, and they kept knocking down the black ones, and there were no black aces. Well, Professor Roscoe Brown, Captain 332nd Roscoe Brown, still alive, using the Luftwaffe records they got when the wall came down, and they've been running them through computers and doing archaeological research, digging in the ground to see if there are any remains of these planes. Guess who's now the second highest scoring ace in Europe? It's Roscoe Brown. And if he gets 3 more confirmations, you may have a black man as the highest scoring World War II American ace in Europe. Now, how about that? They also, as an escort group, are the only ones that perfectly perform their mission. They are the only American escort group that did not lose a single bomber to air combat. Some got shot down by flak, but there's nothing you can do about that.
Mm-hmm.
And they won, by the way, the Army Air Corps and then after it became the Air Force, had a fighter competition called Red Flag. Guess who won it the first 3 years? The Tuskegee Airmen, the 332nd. And what's ironic is they had the award ceremony in some casinos in Reno. The black fighters who won it couldn't even go into casinos to get their trophies. But remember, black folk can't operate complex, fast machinery.
So we've been told. Doesn't it seem to you, and I know you've seen a lot, and I'm gonna wrap it up around here. Doesn't it seem to you like the farther forward we go, the more backwards we go? Meaning,
we've had a digression.
Yes.
The high point was the late '60s. I'm black and I'm proud. Black power. It manifested in political power. So by the 1990s, that was the high point in effective results. Every major American city had a black mayor. We don't now. So where did it go? Well, it's difficult to commit yourself to something that is fundamentally a dangerous thing. The American government, through the FBI and other entities, killed off a lot of black people. That's murdered them. I've had cops admit to me that, I thought you were full of it, but you're right. Our people are working with these guys killing your people. Now, that's not when Joe Brown was a judge. That's when Joe Brown was at UCLA. And there were some killings on campus.
Oh yeah, what the Rampart? You were there during the Rampart investigation? Yes.
Oh no, I was a judge then. I'm talking about Panther Party, US organization, BSU. When the US folk killed John Huggins and Bunchy Carter at UCLA's campus.
So how long has LA? So how long has LA been corrupt? The cops been corrupt then, because they were corrupt during when RFK was there. They were corrupt. They were corrupt when you were in school. They were corrupt in the 80s.
Oh wait. LAPD has had a reputation for corruption going back to the 30s. The mob controlled LAPD. That's how they made a bad mistake trying to do right. They decided that they were going to make the chief of police a lifetime appointment, subject to life or good behavior. because they thought that would get rid of the corruption. Well, they brought in this asshole from Alabama. His name was Parker. He was a racist dog. And LAPD was recruiting from the South. 1973, I swear to you, I was in Jackson, Mississippi, and I was walking down the street. I stopped, I went back, and pinned to a phone pole was a recruitment for LAPD. A recruitment poster. I took it down and sent it back to some homeboys in L.A., pulled down 4 more of them and sent them back as souvenirs. Say, look, we were right. These bastards are coming in from the South.
God, dog.
And they got Parker Center now, but he was a racist dog. When things were going on top, he said, we'll have those dogs back on the bottom where they belong, and we'll be back on the top. It didn't work. They had to bring in the Army, a whole division, to restore peace. It wasn't like in 92 behind that Rodney King. I mean, they leveled the town. There was block after block of slum clearance that went on.
Jeez.
I was 18 at the time. My girlfriend lived 4 blocks from where it started. I saw the whole thing. We walked down there to check it out at night. The night it started.
And it's so crazy that a lot of this stuff seems far-fetched to the average citizen. I know the more I read up on it and the more I saw, I said, how can those people live in those situations knowing the history and almost just live? It's like they're in an occupied country where they can do nothing about it. They can't leave, and they're under this occupation. Doesn't it seem like that's what the LA was? Like they were under occupation and they just accepted
it. Was. The whole city. But see, LA wasn't the only one that had a riots. They had in Chicago, New York, and a whole bunch of other places. We burnt down the inner cities or the downtown areas for most of the largest cities in the country. We did more destruction than the Army Air Corps did World War II with their bombing campaign on Nazi Germany in terms of property damage. That's why, by the way, they came up with the Voting Rights Act of 68. That's why they amended the 64 Civil Rights Act. They weren't concerned about damn peaceful demonstrations. They were concerned about black folk causing the damage that the Army Air Corps did in World War II. I mean, to L.A., people have no idea. You walk out and the whole horizon is flames and smoke.
I've seen the photos of it, the watch riots.
To the other.
Like it looked like bombed out, like you said, bombed out World War II cities that had been blitzkrieg. They literally looked like that, and people did it.
They did. And I was working at the first Project Head Start Center they had in L.A. They hired me. I was an assistant teacher. I just graduated from high school. And when that went down, we got passes from the National Guard General to deliver food and water. Man, I pulled up and I was in a car. I almost peed on myself. When I got home, I opened the trunk, and there were all of these empty glass bottles and towels and gas cans. I said, man, it would have jacked me up. I'm making Molotov cocktails. They would have swore up and down. And I came to a roadblock. Now, these characters were on a Jeep with a 30 cal 1917 up on a Pintle Mountain. And that dude racked it back, so, you know, there was a live ammo belt in there ready to go. And I had to hold this pass out to General inside. I said, no, man, hey, they like that. They read it, flagged me on through. That's when I realized that before the damn thing started, I was going to take all about $50 worth of bottles back for the deposit refund, you know. And I was getting ready to mow my parents' yard. I said, damn, that would have been jacked up, you know.
Right.
But it was what it was, so I was out in the middle of it. And you know what got me is brothers standing in front of a store, not run by black folk, but just people who treated them decently. Say, no, leave this alone. These folk treat us all right. And everybody left it alone. And they burnt down the ones who folk weren't treating them polite and nice.
Listen, Judge, I want to say to you, you are a vast wealth of knowledge, and every time I come on here, they even said you're one of the few guests in which I can be silent and just let them go, because I'm constantly learning. And I can tell you that I've used a few of your talking points when I've done shows. If you've never been told before, thank you for what you bring, which is a knowledge of history and past. Because I said to a lot of people, I hated that I had to learn about Malcolm X from a movie which didn't tell the truth, because I should have learned it from my mom, from my dad, from my grandmother, from my granddad. I should have learned it from there. And I said, a lot of us as black people, we as parents and grandparents, we don't teach our kids the essential history of America and of us that will help them navigate through America as us. Why do you think we seem to not want to be what you are, which is educated on damn near, you are what I wanted to be when I was growing up, a Renaissance man, not a one fucking dimensional human being, but the blacks today are one dimensional. Why do you think we want to be one dimensional instead of posting up and uplifting people like you who can give us a tether to our past and knowledge to go with it?
Okay. Let me tell you, one of my grandfathers was a preacher. He's a bishop, but he's a typical pimp preacher, all right?
Mm-hmm.
The other grandfather was a physician. Now, everybody talking about, yeah, man, you got a bougie background. So, well, yeah, but there's another thing. See, this grandfather practiced medicine from 1896 to 1951, 1 year before he died at 100-something. But he was notorious in his community because he and another brother had gotten away from murdering 2 deputy sheriffs down in Louisiana that had something to do with lynching another brother.
Mm.
So it's like, you know, your grandfather will kill an MF in a minute, but he's a doctor and save his ass after he shot his partner, you know. So it's like, my thing was the real badass in the neighborhood that everybody respected, because he would, you know, stand up where his other folk ran, he'd shoot it out. So he was also a doctor. So that's like, okay, I never had this thing in my head like, man, you ain't nothing, man, just because you go to school. It's like it was expected.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't have any damn fools in my family, my grandfather would say. I don't expect any of my grandchildren to be damn fools either. I wound up being the only grandchild he had. So I listened to what he said, but I was fortunate because he kept the journal. And when I was in my 30s, I encountered his old lawyer who was in his late 90s. And he said, do you come by my old office? I just go by there every now and then just to hang out. I got something for you. Your granddaddy left me something that I was supposed to give to you if I ever saw you when you got to be grown. So I got this journal. Dumbass ex-wife of mine destroyed it because she was mad at me, but, you know, it was what it was. So that Renaissance thing, I was taught that was my obligation.
Mm-hmm.
Be smart, lead your people. My old man taught me how to box. That was before martial arts got popular, but I've taken that crap for 50 years. I read everything I can get my hands on. My old man said, I'm going to teach you to be a man, and he took me shooting 6 or 7 years old, you know. So I've been popping caps for 65 years. He told me I needed to learn how to do that, box and have balls. And the worst thing that could happen to you was not dying, because everybody is going to die. Ain't nobody getting out of here alive, so to speak. You know?
Wow.
So that just got put in my head. It's something that I had to do. So I watched some of my hoodlum friends get jacked up, and a few that weren't who made it. And I just said, you know, I'm using my head. Damn this shit. You know, I'm not going to sell drugs and go deal with crime. Hell no. Because that's not going to help anybody. And at least I can sleep at night. And since I ain't getting out of here alive, I might as well do something so somebody will remember me. But I've had an interesting life. It just happens that I have encountered just about, in one way or another, just about everybody that's made shit happen. I heard Malcolm X, because we went to Chicago one time, and my old man said, I want you to hear him. I was like 16 or something like that. 15 or 16. So I got to hear Malcolm. Hell of an experience, I tell you. The brother was dynamic. I never heard King, but I wound up having his killer in front of me, or alleged killer. And by the way, James Earl Ray didn't kill King. It was the FBI arranged to kill him.
I believe it. Especially when you had a man sitting right there holding.
They had him killed with an XM21. I have the serial number of the murder weapon recorded in a safe place. The fatal shot was fired from the Memphis Fire Department station directly across the street from the Lorraine Motel. It was a two-man hit team.
Believe it 100%. Believe it 100%.
Yeah. Now, focus on that.
We need to have you back.
There's a whole lot of killing that goes on that comes under the guise of in the country's best interest.
Oh, America does what it does. And it's funny, the citizens have been brainwashed from all the way up into that Pledge of Allegiance to a flag, what you're telling children to do. And then you raise a lot of us to be brainwashed and to not think for ourselves. I want to get your last thoughts on this right here. Our education system, I tell people the education system today is not educating and teaching people to think, but it's indoctrinating and teaching people, and it's already thinking for you. Do you believe that?
Agreed.
And if so, well, okay, yeah. So you agree.
Back in the 90s, there was a revolt in the state of Arkansas amongst the parents. You know why? This. They say we object to the new policies of the State Board of Education. Those policies are likely to cause our children to be critical, analytical, and skeptical. And we work so hard to instill beliefs in them that we cannot have them intellectually prepared to question them. So they revised the educational course. See, most of what I have been observed to have done in public is not the product of law school. It's 5th and 6th grade elementary school. But they don't teach that. We got taught log rolling. In other words, what's log rolling? In a legislative body, one side helps the other side. You help me roll my log, I'll help you roll yours. It's called bipartisanship, children. Okay? The South has some very corrupt politics because they are part-time officials and they're paid very low salaries. So they use the position to supplement their income,
yes,
which invites corruption.
Yep.
And we learned that in the 5th grade. In the 6th grade, I can remember very many heated discussions. In the 7th and 8th grade, very many heated discussions in social studies about integration, segregation, all kinds of things, civil rights. revolution and all sorts of stuff. Do you think they have that now?
Yep.
Go to school when such an early hour. I don't understand it. The parents have to go to school. You get the kids stuck in the middle of rush hour traffic, and then they're off at 2:30, and the parents are going to be at work for another 3 hours. It's crazy.
The majority of what we're doing is being undermined. That's why I'm glad you said there was one part in which we were advancing, and then we stopped, and then we started just basically regressing. I honestly believe that you guys' generation was the greatest generation, and if we don't look back to where we were, then we'll never get to where we want to be. And that's not as just black people. That's as Americans, period. We have a duty and an obligation to make sure that our justice system actually delivers justice, that our government actually governs, that our police departments actually do what their credo is. But the problem is many people have lost sight on that. So in your last words, what can you do to try, or what would you like to say to the people as a whole of what may be able to get us back on some type of track to get where we were so we can get where we want to be?
Don't sweat the small stuff. Control your feelings. It's not about emotion. Quit being thin-skinned. Learn to not sell wolf tickets. And if somebody's running the dozens, don't get all freaked out. And your mama may, in fact, be as ugly as they're saying she is. But, focus. It ain't about being trifling. Quit looking for money and start looking for power. Power produces money. Money cannot be obtained without power or an idea. Get into STEM, science, technology, and engineering, because what we talk about when we say we're going to be entrepreneurs is same old in a market that's already glutted, already set up so that we can't deal with it because we don't have the capitalization to get into it. Start developing something new, a new product, a new idea, and the only way to do that in today's world is to be into science, technology, engineering, and math. If you want to do something in life, focus on that stuff. Get courage, get some balls. Sometimes put yourself in a position where you got nothing to lose, because the most dangerous person anywhere is a man who has nothing to lose. Be willing to sacrifice all, risk it when necessary, because only then will the gains come that are worth anything. Don't be trifling. Don't commit suicide because you haven't done anything with your life by provoking somebody to take your own life. Being a hoe is not good. Being a pimp is disgusting. Make where you live a better, safer, more secure place. Make it your goal and obligation to be a man and a woman, and you won't have to worry about whether there is daylight at the end of your tunnel, because it will become your profound and enjoyable obligation to make sure you get the people you're responsible for through to the daylight at the end of the tunnel and take out the fire-breathing Gila monsters that are putting the smoke and flames in everybody else's way. Be a man, be a woman, be focused. Don't be a selfish, self-hating asshole like so many are today that want to distract from the fundamental resources that men and women bring to the table. We make it happen. We set up and produce tomorrow. We make the conditions for tomorrow what they are. And that is our obligation, not to cop out on some little hedonistic nonsense of playing I want good times and I want to be safe and happy. That doesn't work. Be a man, be a woman. And your life will be worthwhile.
Brother, thank you so much for that ending sermon. I talk to people a lot about just this. We had so many men today, and it's really sad that no one pays attention to the fact that men are taking their lives at ridiculous numbers, because no one cares about men anymore. When you hear CNBC or whoever the hell else say, these many soldiers came home in a body bag, or we don't even think about it because it's just men. But if a woman hears a word that she doesn't like from someone, the world stops and we must make sure she's taken care of. The people who built society, the people who are on top of your skyscrapers, the people who police, the people who help whenever disasters happen, those people are called men. And yet we don't value men at all. We go out of our way to destroy the lives of men through divorce, through child support. When I have you back on the show, I want to talk to you about the child support and divorce systems when you come back. But we do all these things. We do all these things to destroy men, and we do nothing to uplift them. And I think that is coming from on high, because when you destroy men, you destroy families. And when you destroy families, to me, you destroy society. What do you think?
That's the game plan, is to emasculate the country, to make it safe for sissies and ugly, unattractive females who don't like me. Now, I'm not even getting on somebody about being a homosexual. Some homosexuals can take care of business.
Yes.
And they keep what they do in the bedrooms. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a sissified MF who isn't worth shit. Julius Caesar was a badass, but he was gay as hell. They used to say, watch your wife around Julius, because he will steal or be husband to any man's wife, but he'll be wife to any man. He was gay, but he was badass. Alexander the Great was gay, but he was a badass. You know, the Gestapo was some badass, suicidal folk, but they were gay.
Yep.
But what I can't stand is these folks to just abdicate all manly responsibility, to divest themselves of all semblance of masculinity. They are useless, because women and children get in the lifeboat first, because women and children are a resource for the future. Men bring the children in through the women, and they support them and they protect them. In our role as protector, we are expendable. So what are these kids? Neither he nor she, because they've got a dick, but they want to be a she. They got a pussy, but they want to be a he. So they're its. It's he, she, it. And that's Mother Nature. So don't let them destroy this thing. You know, this is playtime. But there are people that want to take us out. They can't stand what we've done to them. And I say we because when you live here, you know, nukes don't ask, oh, before I radiate your ass, are you one of the good guys or the bad guys?
You are correct.
That's reality. And when you talk about, I'm going back to Africa, where there are about 54, maybe 55 sovereign entities in Africa. And people go over there with expectations that, oh, I'm coming back home. But where are you from, man? Are you Christian or are you Muslim, man? I'm a Christian. Well, what sort of Christian are you? Be careful how you answer. It may put you in jail if you answer wrong. Well, man, what you mean? I'm just a Christian. Be careful what you say. There is animals for people who are the wrong kind of something. You don't want to do that. And what is your policy? How much do you bring to the table? What is it going to be worth for me to allow you to get what you want? You know, how much dash are you going to come up with? How much you going to bribe somebody's ass? You know, we get to thinking about this nice, nasty little fancy. Be real. See, they need us right where we are because we are the center of civilization, power, and technology. They have resources, but they won't do a damn thing if they don't get it together. I was trying to help somebody out who was an ambassador for a union, but I mean, what they were talking about was asking private citizens for money that the private citizens are used to coming from governments.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that we shouldn't have some form of unity, But you have to remember, that's like saying you're European, so you got to be all on the same side. Well, the Russians and the Germans weren't on the same side. The Hungarians and the Czechs weren't on the same side. Go to the goddamn Balkans, and they're still trying to kill each other over trivial differences. So why should Africa be any different? That's the nature of humanity.
Yes, I kept telling people we are not a monolith. Just because we got a lot of melanin doesn't mean we think the same. That the way that if we believe that, then white people are supposed to think the same, and they do not. The Civil War is a great example of it.
Yep. White folk don't think the same. We had World War I, World War II, the Napoleonic Wars, you know, the 100 Years Wars, the 30 Years Wars, you know, the Charlemagne, you know, oppression. You had William and his worms, you know.
Hell, the Salem witch trials. You had the Salem witch trials. There's been so many times these small sects fought each other. The fucking Irish and the English, the Irish and the Scots. These were look at what Russia's doing. You can't tell the difference between a fucking Ukrainian and they look the same.
But they're killing each other.
Right.
So Africans are just like that. We're the original humans, but you know, they inherited that from us. Shit. But look at William's words. William the Conqueror was William the Bastard.
Yes.
And he was Duke of Normandy. He conquered England. And his descendant is sitting on the throne now, Queen Elizabeth, okay? Do you know what William's worms were?
What's that?
To intimidate the English public, the Anglo-Saxon public of England. He had his troops fall on a village, seize 10 men, pluck their eyes out, cut their tongues out, puncture their eardrums, amputate both arms, both legs, so they'd have to squirm around like worms in the mud and dirt, and the villagers would have to feed them to be reminded of his awesome power.
Damn.
They have excavated enough remains all through certain sections of Britain to realize that there was truth in the Doomsday Book that they kept to record everybody's interest, that William had deliberately starved to death more than 125,000 of his subjects so he wouldn't have to be bothered with them.
Ooh.
Starved 125,000 English. This is back when it was real primitive, you know?
Ooh.
But that's the ancestor of the current Queen of England.
Damn.
That's some cold-blooded stuff.
Yes.
Or his uncle was besieging a town right outside of Normandy. And some of the people in the town opened the gate so the Normans could come in. So once they took the village, or the town rather, the Duke, the Earl, said, kill them all.
You don't mean the Duke of Earl?
Said, sire, some of them are your friends. He said, kill them all. Let God sort out the guilty from the meritorious. Some ruthless folk. We've messing around with their defenders. Half they've been praying to Jesus. The same Jesus that these folk relied upon to kill off all these folk and torture and maim. One of the more noble kings in England was Edward I. One of the most superior kings was Edward III. It led to a lot of characters that Shakespeare wrote about. But Edward II was gay. One of his lovers, they wound up executing because they didn't like it. You know, they deposed him and then they executed him. You know how they did it? They laughed about it. They stripped him naked, stuck a brass funnel up his anus, and took a poker they'd cut the barbs off of, heated it red hot, and stuck it up the funnel and fried his chitterlings. It took 10 hours, so they fried him from the inside out. They said they could hear his scream from 5 miles away. The English found it very funny. The oldest legal case in England is still running from 1526. Some holder of a stretch of land that includes Liverpool now was captured in a hunting expedition by one of his rivals. They stripped him, tied him to a spit, and slow roasted him for 3 days until he agreed to sign over the properties for a quick, merciful death. They said the roast was liberally anointed with oil, spelled O-Y-L-E, to keep it from charring.
Fuck. These people
Now,
were
that's
brutal.
still in front of an English chancery court. Every time they get a new chancellor, he calls the case and takes it under advisement. It's been going on since 1526. That's almost 500 years.
Ooh.
Now,
Man.
that's your opponent. See, that's who we're going lining up praying to Jesus in front of. Nothing sure been good, niggas. You know, y'all can. You know, we been good, son. Sure, we know we sure would appreciate some benefits.
Right, that same group of people who has so much love for you that when they brought you over here, they went to see which was the biggest and strongest of you, and then they shot him in the head so the rest of them could see. Then they took the next one and fucked him in the ass so the rest of them could see that. That's the group you say.
By the way, you know where they came up with this scheme that they put on the plantations and stuff? They experimented on the Irish about 50-some years before they started the American plantation.
Yes.
Thing. And some ruthless folk.
Yep.
By the way, their descendants wouldn't declare Irish to be white folk until a joint resolution of Congress in 1878 declared them to be white from then on.
Yep.
They had been declared non-white, but in return for their service for the Union and the Confederacy during the Civil War, they would have made official white folks.
Yep. Just like even the term Slavs is just is slaves.
Slave. That's where they got the term slave from, Slav.
Well, we can talk about this all night.
They enslaved their own white folk. Now, what the hell do you think they're going to do when they get some colored folk from Africa? And they ain't changed genetically, biologically, any other way since they done this. So all of a sudden we expect them to do that, and all they're doing now is they're trying to sissify the whole thing so everybody can be, taste the rainbow. Like, look at that commercial. They got a giraffe, and this homeboy with some dreads, what's he doing? Milking the giraffe, but he could be pulling some dick. And he gets some Skittles candy in a big pail, and he's stuffing a handful of it in his mouth and grinning with candy all over his teeth. That is a dead giveaway for somebody giving head and swallowing. The Skittles want you to taste the rainbow, see the imagery.
That is true.
And those folks you were castigating, talking about, I'm a man, but I just like, female, chicks with dicks, God damn, that ain't no female.
Even how they even say that, chicks with dicks. They said, no, that's a man with tits. That is not a chick. There's nothing about that that's a chick, and I refuse to talk to them about that. We got to have you come back on the show. You've given me 3 hours.
And by the way, before I leave, I am not calling anybody sis any goddamn thing unless it's S-I-S, and I'm calling her sis like a sister.
Thank you. So you heard that part of the show. You saw that? How are they going to prefix us?
Is he, she, or it, goddammit? Which one are you?
How did
you got a dick, you a he, you better act like a he. But I don't believe in hitting women. But a motherfucker with a dick, knock his ass out if he gets out of line.
Don't they got some kind of nerve, though?
Don't try to play bitch, because I like ladies any damn way.
Don't they got a lot of nerve though? Like you heard that part that I said before I ended, that they got a lot of nerve that they're gonna put this cis in front of something that is. What the fuck is a cis?
How you going to, a man don't have to ask your permission to be a damn man. Fuck you, I'm a man. Don't sis in front of me, sissy.
And it's wordplay. We know what a sissy is, and they're gonna put cis in front of normal. Think about it.
If you want to play a freak, it's your business. The First Amendment gives you the right to be a freak. Just admit it. You know, they have handicap zones, but I don't see how you're handicapped. You don't have a physical handicap. You got a head handicap, your mind, but you know they closed down thanks to St. Ron the Reagan. All those years ago, they closed down all of the mental health institutions because he said everybody's faking it. They can be on the streets. I understand that if they take a paper placemat, they can place it down on a bit and be warm in the winter. That's what he said one time, you know. Asked it, but they like it. By the way, he was our first gay president, Hollywood star. They used to have a rumor that the boys would come to the White House, deal with Nancy. When they got through with her, they'd deal with him.
Damn.
Hollywood star. The LGBT claims that always 9 out of every 10 folk in Hollywood have been that way.
Wow. Look, if I didn't have to go, I'd keep talking to you all night. My daughter want to go see the Joker. I'm going to take her to go see that. And I don't want to keep you all night because I got to save some for the next time you come on the show. Brother, thank you so much. Again, let them know where they can find you on social media so they can get the same knowledge from you that they get right here.
Thank you. And I may go see the Joker, but I think I'm going to see that Brad Pitt movie.
Oh, yes.
He got really good. He's got really good now that he looks like he's a mature man. And anybody that was stroking Angela Jolie, that's a bad motherfucker.
You got to admire him. There's only 3 men that I know. Him, Billy Bob Thornton, and her brother.
Look, I had a place I was renting in Beverly Hills. I lived 2 blocks over, and I saw that fine rascal out there picking up paper in the morning. And with no makeup on, half messed up, bare ragged shorts, he was still fine. Dang.
Okay, you got to answer a question for me. You said you were renting. When I was out there, I was renting as well. I had people, of course they were broke niggas, but let's just call it what it is. But I had people telling me, if you so rich, Tommy, you wouldn't be renting. Tell them that there's no reason for somebody who goes from, who moves like that and is in the business to buy a home.
Oh, no, there's no reason. I bought one out in some place called Ojai, which is 75 miles out of L.A., no traffic.
Right.
No smog, it was cool. I had 26 acres, and my driveway to the street was literally 1/8 mile long, lined with trees. I had a damn mansion. Hell, I housed it, but I didn't want it in L.A. I rented a place in Beverly Hills. It had an old speakeasy in the basement. But, you know, It was on Camden, 1 block over from Rodeo Road, 2 blocks walking from the shopping center.
Mm-hmm. I stayed up on Mulholland for a while.
Yeah.
And I was, I don't, you probably know, I was the last house, like when people go up to the Hollywood sign, I was that big white house right there that looks down on the Batman. You can, when you look down around the curve, there's that Batman cave where the old TV show was.
Yeah.
I was right there.
I know where it is. Nice house, man. Way to go.
So, but it's strange that we have like just so much stuff that we could talk about that should be important, but we'd rather talk about dumb shit that goes on. But I'm going to watch both of them. Yes, I want to watch Ad Astra because I heard that was good. Brad Pitt he's doing really good movies, but I want to see this Joker. Everybody's talking about how good it is. And then there's one more, The Irishman, the Netflix release that's going to be in limited release with that jackass what's his name? Al Pacino, not Al Pacino, but the other one.
De Niro.
Yeah, Robert De Niro. That he's nuts. What do you?
Yeah, he is.
He's crazy.
Yeah, it kind of is. By the way, if you can get it on pay-per-view or DirecTV or Comcast or Netflix, check out Fury.
Fury.
Brad Pitt's in it. He's a tank commander. And see what they're talking about why they get so much respect for that war. It's one of the best war movies I've seen. They even have a real Tiger tank, Tiger 1, Mark 6.
People are verifying that for you. They're saying it's a good movie. Everybody's verifying that one. They were like, they love that movie. Fury was a damn good movie. It's really good. Great film. Good. So I need to check it out.
Yeah, you need to check that out. It's got all kinds of things about human nature and why folks think that war was such a different thing.
Okay.
But anyway,
I'm gonna check it out, and when I get back from the movie, I'm gonna text you and let you know if.
Brother, you gotta take your daughter to the movie, and
Yes,
I gotta go find myself a date. So, hey.
Well, I tell you what, when I get back, I'm gonna text you if it's good or not. I'm gonna give you a rating between 1 and 10. I'm gonna let you know what I thought of it, and then when you see a Brad Pitt movie, you gotta let me know what you think.
All right, cool. Take it easy.
Talk to you later.
Later
bro.
on, brother.
Peace. Hey man, I'm telling y'all, I could talk to him all night. I think the reason I like talking to Judge Joe Brown now is because no matter what you call me a coon about, you got to start calling him a coon. What did I tell you guys? My grandmother told me I was an old soul. Who do I get along best with? Really old people, really young people. Because I think like the old people, and young people don't have enough people around them that they can listen to. How many of y'all have noticed that? If you look at the people I get along with the most, it's people older than me or people like around 20. Because the people that are around 20, nobody's telling them shit. Who's telling them something? Who can they look up to? There's nobody for them to listen to because everybody around them is trying to be like them. 20-year-olds tell me, how many 40-year-olds actually declare themselves older than you and not to be doing? Even though I fuck a gang of 20-year-olds, they'll tell you while I'm fucking them, we're not the same. We're different. I don't think like you. I don't watch what you watch. I don't eat what you eat. I don't speak the same language you speak. And we're going to make sure that's a difference. We're going to make sure there's a difference. Like my man Chris in the comment section. There's a difference. And I'm going to treat you like that. I'm not going to try to be your buddy. Why am I trying to be your buddy and talk like you? You wear the same clothes you wear. That's not how you relate to people younger than you. That is not how you relate to people younger than you, by trying to be them. Let them be them. You had your chance. You had your day. Let them be them. Give them something that they rarely get. Someone that's actually going to talk to them like they give a shit and give them some knowledge they've never had. We too busy trying to subvert their youth so they don't even give a chance to be young. That's why when they're 40, they start trying to be 20 because when they were 20, they were never allowed to be. There used to be a time when an old dude would marry a young girl, and what he would do with that young girl would train her. How many of y'all understand that? That's what my granddad did with my grandmother. The old dude would marry the young woman, train that young woman, not try to relate to that woman. There would be a separation. We're not the same. We don't look at the same stuff. We don't enjoy the same stuff. We're different. Now, these women, they want to be their daughter's best friend. They want to get on Instagram talking about I can still wear me and my daughter wear the same dress. Look at me and my daughter's dress. Who gives a shit? Good for you. Then when you see that woman who was in the Players Club, when she all fine, but her daughter 900 pounds, you don't even care. You want people to look at you and say you look better than your daughter. If you're a mother and you care about your kid, you're not going to be walking around all fine while your daughter 900 pounds. You don't want people to keep saying to your daughter, man, your mama's still in good shape. What happened to you? Enjoy the age you are. Move on when you get to another one. Now, she's not actually 900 pounds. I'm saying Lisa Ray still had a good shape and her daughter was out of shape. It didn't make sense. If you Lisa Ray, the least you can do is have your child be something. That's why, I don't know. It's like men at least, we are happy that our son beat us. Dale Curry is not jealous of his son. Matter of fact, Dale Curry stays out of the spotlight. They have to go to him. He doesn't talk about, cause when I played, Dale Curry quick to say he doing shit I never thought of doing. He doing shit I could never do. We're proud of that. These women don't seem very proud of when their daughters are better than them. When their daughter got a fatter ass than them. When their daughter got bigger titties than them. They too busy at 13 and 14 calling their daughter little fast hoes. You too busy calling your daughter out of her name, making her feel bad for something she got naturally because you wish you had it naturally. So you want to make her feel insecure about something you wish you had. Y'all, let me stop. Let me stop because I got to go. The one good thing you guys each can do is just try to love each other. And I like when he verified what I said. Men have no problem with homosexuals. Homosexuals have been around since humanity's been around. We got a problem with faggots. Can I get an amen? Fellas out there, tell them if I'm lying. I have no problem with a gay man. I have no problem with homosexuals. I got a problem with faggots. Faggots should make everybody mad. You still a man no matter what it is, and there are plenty of gay men out here will whoop your ass. And we'll sit down, have a beer with your ass, we'll arm wrestle your ass, we'll do all kind of shit. And you don't want to piss him off, because after he whoop your ass, he might fuck you in the ass. So you calm down with all that punk talk to one of the wrong punks. We don't have a problem with homosexuals, because homosexuals like anybody else. You do what you do. The nigga that's cheating on his wife ain't going around sharing it with everybody. He keep that shit to himself. You go around sharing it to everybody and no, there's some decorum with this. I'm not playing with you. You call the wrong homosexual punk, he'll whoop your ass. And he'll fuck you at the end of it to prove a point. There gotta come a time in which we say it matters what we have out here. And even they will tell you, the regular homosexual will tell you, we can't have no 60 and 70% of the population homosexual. That's stupid. They'll tell you that. There are homosexual men who will have a kid before he just decide to live the homosexual lifestyle. You know what he won't want his son to be? That. The same way a gangster doesn't want his child to be a gangster. It's a gang element, there's a street element, there's a thug element, but it cannot be pervasive throughout the community because it ruins the whole thing. Why do you think the Italians actually had rules of how the shit worked? They didn't sit around and say, we thug, everybody need to be thug. No, that makes no sense. You have no laws at that point if everybody is underground. There's an element, and this element helps the world work. The same reason as we have snakes outside and crickets outside and flies outside and frogs and everything else. These shits actually help shit work. But if you have a frog infestation or fly infestation or snake infestation or a damn the ecosystem, you guys understand what I'm saying? The ecosystem is thrown off when you have too much of something or something is overrun. You need them all. Hell, we need all these bugs. When we try to get rid of bugs, well, you need them damn bugs to decompose shit. You understand that doctors will tell you that you need to have a certain amount of shit inside your body. You need to have a certain amount of shit around. Well, that's not good to have them kind of. No. You actually need it. Like when you use that the stuff that y'all wash y'all hands with. Y'all know that's not good, right? The alcohol stuff that people put on their hands. That's not good. Because some of the bacteria that you have on your fucking hand, you need it. And you are killing it. You may not believe it, but there are some of the things around you that you don't like that you do need. If you missed the show, go and watch it on the website. Good night, motherfuckers. I'll talk to you later.